Chapter 1754. Hong Xiu was taken away by Mu Fan. Even though Yi Xiao was infuriated, there was nothing he could do. He was already severely injured and Qiu Ru and Lu Xiao had no intention of doing anything. After Hong Xiu was taken away, Qiu Ru and Lu Xiao looked at Yi Xiao helplessly and said, "Yi Xiao, I'm sorry." Their sector lord had already spoken. As such, Qiu Ru and Lu Xiao couldn't go against his words. Hence, they were helpless when Hong Xiu was taken away by Mu Fan. After saying that, Qiu Ru and Lu Xiao left together. No one had expected the situation to develop to this stage. However, the various sector lords had already isolated Hong Lian and Yi Xiao, at least when it came to Hong Xiu. After Mu Fan displayed his ability to devour and refine the will of the heavenly way, the attitudes of the various sector lords instantly changed. Along the way, he brought Hong Xiu out of Yi Xiao's cave. Along the way, no one tried to stop Mu Fan. It was very easy for him to bring Hong Xiu out. Hong Lian and Mu Tai were still fighting in the sky. When Hong Lian saw Hong Xiu being brought out by Mu Fan, the anger in her heart reached its peak. Hong Lian's eyes looked as though they were about to spit fire. She looked coldly at Mu Tai and shouted, "Mu Tai, with me here today, no one can take Xiu away." Mu Fan wanted to take Hong Xiu away. As her mother, Hong Lian naturally wouldn't agree. Even if she had to risk her life, she wouldn't watch Hong Xiu be taken away. She was almost ready to risk her life. Looking at Hong Lian, who was fighting with Mu Tai in the sky, Hong Xiu's eyes turned red as she shouted, "Mother." She was taken away by Mu Fan. In the entire Hachibra Senkai, only Yi Xiao and Hong Lian were willing to fight for her. Of course, Yi Xiao couldn't do anything. However, Hong Lian seemed to have gone crazy. She looked as though she was going to risk her life against Mu Tai. Women were weak, but mothers were strong. Seeing her daughter being taken away, Hong Lian couldn't do nothing. It could even be said that she wouldn't let anything happen to Hong Xiu even if she had to give up her life. Facing Hong Lian's desperate attacks, Mu Tai didn't have it easy. After all, both of them were immortal emperors. If Hong Lian went all out, Mu Tai had to be careful. He couldn't afford to be careless. And most importantly, Mu Tai didn't have any intention of fighting with Hong Lian. At that moment, Red Lotus, as a mother, could be said to have fallen into a frenzy for her daughter. Mu Tai defended against the attacks and said, "Don't worry. Hong Lian, why do you have to do this?" From the moment Hong Xiu was born, she was destined to be Fan Er's successor. Bulsh *T, Xiu Er's existence is never for anyone's sake. Xiu Er is Xiu Er. Hong Lian shouted angrily. Those who didn't know what they were talking about wouldn't understand. However, it was obvious that they were talking about Mu Fan and Hong Xiu. This was probably why Mu Fan treated Hong Xiu this way. Hong Xiu was Hong Lian's daughter. In Hong Lian's opinion, Hong Xiu's existence was never for anyone's sake. Hong Xiu was Hong Xiu, a unique existence in this world. She was also Hong Lian's flesh and blood. Hong Lian's attacks became even more violent. It was to the point where she was willing to trade her life for Mu Tai's. Hong Lian didn't even try to dodge Mu Tai's attacks. She was fearless. Hong Lian was already going crazy. On the other hand, Mu Tai wasn't. Seeing that he couldn't hold Hong Lian down, a cold glint flashed in his eyes. He shouted coldly to the sky, "Everyone, do you really want to watch me and Hong Lian suffer?" Mu Tai didn't want to risk his life against Hong Lian. As he said this, the other realm lords appeared in the sky around the two of them. The realm lords appeared. The various world lords appeared. Among them, Qing Yun looked at Red Lotus and spoke first. "Red Lotus, we have to look at the big picture." The meaning of Qing Yun's words was very clear. He wanted Hong Lian to give up on Hong Xiu. After all, compared to Hong Xiu, Mu Fan was the most important to Hachibra Senkai. Hearing Qing Yun's words, the coldness in Hong Lian's eyes didn't decrease. She swept her gaze across the realm lords and revealed a look of disdain. "Cut the crap. If you want to fight, then fight. With me here today, no one can touch my daughter." As she spoke, Hong Lian's aura rose once again. Seeing this, Mu Tai and the other realm lords' expressions changed. Among them, Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Hong Lian, you're crazy." Hong Lian's aura soared once again. Moreover, there was clearly a problem with this increase in aura. Hong Lian had burned her blood essence. Facing the red lotus that was burning its blood essence, the faces of Yi Xian and the other realm masters immediately darkened. This was simply crazy. They were all realm masters of the 8 desolate immortal world, yet the red lotus actually wanted to burn its blood essence to fight to the death? Looking at Hong Lian, who was willing to burn her blood to protect Hong Xiu, the expressions of the realm lords changed. Mu Tai was the first to speak. "Stop her." No matter what the reason was, he couldn't let Hong Lian continue burning her blood essence like this. Hearing Mu Tai's words, the other realm lords also nodded and attacked Hong Lian together. They were all Immortal Emperor Realm's supreme experts. Hong Lian was facing the other 6 realm lords alone. For a time, Hong Lian was at a disadvantage, and was completely suppressed. Fighting 1 against 6, even if Hong Lian burned her blood essence, she naturally wouldn't be a match for the 6 realm lords. Mu Tai and the others didn't have any intention of harming Hong Lian, they only wanted to subdue her. After all, Hong Lian was one of the 8 Hachibra Senkai's realm lords. If she was lost, it would be a huge blow to the Hachibra Senkai. However, facing Hong Lian, who was eager to protect her, the realm lords would naturally hurt her if they wanted to subdue her. However, this was something that couldn't be helped. As long as it wasn't life-threatening, it wouldn't be too much of a problem. Very quickly, Hong Lian was struck in the chest by Ning Su's palm. She immediately spat out a large mouthful of blood. Looking at Hong Lian being injured and being controlled by Mu Fan, Hong Xiu's beautiful face was already covered in tears. Hong Xiu's mood could be imagined as she watched her mother fight 6 realm lords for her. Especially after seeing Hong Lian being injured by Ning Su, Hong Xiu was already shaking her head. "Don't. Mother, don't fight anymore. I'll go with him, I'll go with him." Hong Xiu didn't want to see Hong Lian get hurt again. She would rather sacrifice herself and let Mu Fan leave than let Hong Lian continue fighting with the 6 realm lords. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 1755. Hong Xiu shouted with a tear-stained face. Upon hearing this, the people in the sky did not stop fighting. However, Sector Lord Zhua Ting of the 6th realm spoke up. "Hong Lian, did you hear that? Your daughter is not in any danger. You don't have to fight so hard." Their real aim was not to kill Hong Lian but to subdue her. Hence, if Hong Lian was willing to stop, they would not make things difficult for her. Unfortunately, Hong Lian did not seem to have any intention of stopping after hearing Zhua Ting's words. Instead, she continued to fight with them. Since Hong Lian did not give up, Zhua Ting and the other sector lords had no choice but to strengthen their attacks. After all, Hong Lian was burning her blood force. Even though she was a celestial emperor, she would still be severely injured if the battle dragged on. This was something that no one wanted to see. "Let's take her down first." At this moment, Mu Tai shouted in a deep voice. Then, he took the lead and charged towards Hong Lian. He did not care about anything else. He only wanted to take Hong Lian down as soon as possible. Even if he had to injure her, it would be good as long as he could subdue her. Upon hearing Mu Tai's words, Zhua Ting and the other sector lords also took action. Although Hong Lian was burning her blood force, she was still injured very quickly. Then, she was subdued by Mu Tai and the other sector lords. The 6 of them worked together and forcibly dispelled Hong Lian's blood force. Then, Hong Lian spat out a mouthful of blood, and her face turned even paler. It was obvious that she was severely injured. However, even so, the coldness in her eyes did not lessen. Upon seeing this, Mu Tai said, "Bring Hong Lian to the 1st realm for treatment." Mu Tai suggested that they send Hong Lian to the first realm for treatment. Although it was called treatment, it was actually house arrest. This was because Mu Tai could see that Hong Lian would not allow Mu Fan to take Hong Xiu away no matter what. In this case, it would be much easier to control Hong Xiu if they brought her and her mother to the first realm. The sector lords present were well aware of Mu Tai's true intentions. However, they also knew that Mu Tai wouldn't harm Hong Lian's life. As such, no one objected to his decision. Anyway, the bottom line of these sector lords was to not harm Hong Lian's life. As long as Mu Tai could do this, Hong Lian would follow him to the first realm. Even if she was put under house arrest, it would be fine. Moreover, if Hong Lian was left alone, everyone knew that today's incident would probably happen again. After all, it was impossible for Hong Lian to leave her daughter alone. Zhou Ting and the other sector lords didn't object, so Mu Tai prepared to bring Hong Lian along. However, at this moment Luo Li, who hadn't shown himself all this time, suddenly appeared in front of everyone. His expression was calm, and no one could tell whether he was happy or angry as he said indifferently, "There's no need to go to the first realm. If you're worried, let me take Red Lotus back to the seventh realm. I promise I won't let her leave the seventh realm." Ever since Mu Fan's incident, the various sector lords had all stood on Mu Fan's side. Only Luo Li was still maintaining a neutral stance. Of course, Luo Li's neutrality didn't mean that he would stand on Mu Fan's side, but he also wouldn't stand on Red Lotus's side. This was because Luo Li knew very well that Mu Fan was indeed very important to Hachibra Senkai. Therefore, Luo Li didn't directly say that he wanted to protect Hong Xiu, nor did he have such an intention. However, he spoke up for Hong Lian. In any case, they were all under house arrest. Rather than going to the first realm, they might as well go to the seventh realm. At the very least, Luo Li wasn't Mu Tai, and his personal relationship with Hong Lian was pretty good. Hearing Luo Li's words, the few sector lords present exchanged glances with each other and remained silent. Luo Li lightly smiled as he looked at Yi Xian and the others. He knew that they didn't care about this, so he directly looked at Mu Tai and lightly said, "How is it, senior brother Mu Tai? What if I say no?" Hearing this, Mu Tai coldly said. Mu Tai was obviously unwilling, but Luo Li also didn't want Hong Lian to be brought back to the first realm by Mu Tai. Hearing Mu Tai's words, Luo Li didn't hesitate at all and immediately spoke up. "Then I'll attack together with Hong Lian. I don't think senior brother Mu Tai wants to see Hachibra Senkai fall apart, right?" Luo Li's words already carried a strong sense of threat. Hearing this, Mu Tai's expression darkened once again as he stared fixedly at Luo Li. Facing Mu Tai's gaze, Luo Li didn't show the slightest bit of fear. His expression remained calm as he spoke. "Senior brother Mu Tai, it's better to leave a way out." Now that Mu Tai was relying on his power, there were some things that the realm lords could follow him on. However, Hong Lian was the realm lord of the 8th realm after all. Mu Tai couldn't do whatever he wanted. After speaking, Luo Li faced the silent Mu Tai. He didn't rush him and just looked at him quietly. The two of them looked at each other for a long time. Finally, Mu Tai nodded and said, "All right." Since Luo Li had already spoken, it wasn't wise to forcefully take Hong Lian away. Furthermore, Luo Li had promised that he wouldn't let Hong Lian cause any more trouble. This was already a concession that Luo Li had made for the sake of the big picture. As his voice faded, Mu Tai gently pushed Hong Lian. A gentle force sent Hong Lian to Luo Li. Luo Li held Hong Lian in his hand. Without saying anything else, he disappeared into the sky with Hong Lian. After Luo Li left with Hong Lian, the other realm lords also left one after another. In the end, Hong Xiu was also taken away by Mu Fan. Because of Mu Fan, the situation in the Hachibra Senkai had undergone a huge change. Mu Fan had become the most important person in the Hachibra Senkai. Because Mu Fan could devour and refine the will of the heavenly way, The other realm lords also stood on his side and allowed Mu Fan to take Hong Xiu away. In the cave, Yi Xiao lay weakly on the bed. With his current situation, he couldn't do anything for Hong Xiu, let alone stop Mu Fan. He could only watch helplessly. He glanced at Qiu Ru and Lu Xiao. Yi Xiao didn't hate their actions. After all, this was the decision of the realm lords. They were just following orders. However, it was impossible for Yi Xiao to watch Hong Xiu be taken away without doing anything. However, in the entire Hachibara Senkai, the only person that Yi Xiao or Hong Xiu could rely on was Xiao Chen. Because of his own condition, Yi Xiao couldn't use his spiritual energy. He could only look at Qiu Ru and say, "I don't blame you for what happened just now. However, can you help me send a message to Xiao Chen?" He could only send a message to Xiao Chen. After hearing Yi Xiao's words, Qiu Ru said in a deep voice, "Sure. However, do you think that Xiao Chen can resolve this matter?" Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1756. The only person Yi Xiao could think of now was Xiao Chen. Hearing Qiu Ru's words, Yi Xiao sighed helplessly and said, "That's all we can do now." Other than Xiao Chen, Yi Xiao really could not think of anyone else who could help. Hearing this, Qiu Ru did not say anything else. She took out a voice transmission talisman and immediately sent a message to Xiao Chen. While Qiu Ru was sending a message to Xiao Chen, in the 7th realm, Luoli had already treated Hong Lian's injuries. However, after forcibly burning her blood essence, she still needed some time to recuperate. In Luoli's cave dwelling, in a beautiful bamboo garden, Luoli and Hong Lian sat opposite each other. Their faces were still pale, but they did not seem to be seriously injured. However, Hong Lian's eyes were filled with coldness. Hong Lian was very clear about what Mu Fan wanted to do when Hong Xiu was taken away. Not only her, but Luoli and the other realm lords also knew. Looking at Hong Lian's cold expression, Luoli took a sip of tea and said indifferently, "What you sowed in the past, you reap what you sow today." Hong Lian was slightly stunned when she heard Luoli's words. Then, she smiled helplessly. Luoli was right. What you sowed in the past, you reap what you sow today. The entire Hachibara Senkai knew that Hong Xiu and Mu Fan were biological siblings. In fact, they were indeed biological siblings. However, there was a hidden story, and this hidden story was the karma that Luoli had mentioned. When the Hachibara Senkai was first established, Hong Lian relied on her celestial emperor cultivation to become one of the founders of the Hachibara Senkai. She was one of the 8 great realm lords. At the same time, Hong Lian, due to her bloodline, had found many men and absorbed their essence and bloodline power to nurture her own babies, Hong Xiu and Mu Fan. In Hachibara Senkai, other than a few sector lords, no one knew that Hong Lian's true identity was that of a 9-tailed fox. Moreover, she was a pure-blooded 9-tailed fox. Her bloodline power was extremely dense and pure. 9-tailed demon foxes were extremely rare in the 8 Desolate. It could even be said that they were almost extinct. There were 2 main reasons for this. First, it was extremely difficult for 9-tailed foxes to reproduce. Unlike other races, 9-tailed foxes had to absorb a massive amount of forbidden artifacts and bloodlines in order to reproduce. And where did these bloodlines come from? They came from cultivators. Therefore, if a 9-tailed fox wanted to produce offspring, it would need to devour the essence and bloodlines of countless martial artists. As for the warriors who had their essence and bloodlines devoured, the final outcome was naturally death. It could be said that the 9-tailed fox clan had to pay a high price to reproduce. But at the same time, after paying such a huge price, the 9-tailed fox was born with exceptional strength. This was the first reason. The second reason was that the 9-tailed fox clan was in an awkward position among the 100 clans. It could be said that the 9-tailed fox clan was a hybrid between the Yao clan and the Beast clan. Therefore, the Beast clan had never acknowledged the existence of the 9-tailed fox clan. Not only did they not acknowledge the Nine-Tailed Fox clan as a member of the Beast clan, but the Beast clan even hated the Nine-Tailed Fox clan. As for the Yao clan, they had long gone extinct in the long river of time. Therefore, because the Nine-Tailed Fox clan's bloodline was between the Beast clan and the Yao clan, their awkward position, coupled with the fact that it was extremely difficult for them to reproduce, caused the Nine-Tailed Fox clan's population to dwindle. In the end, they were almost extinct. Hong Lian's identity was a secret in Hachibara Senkai. It was also because of this that when Hong Lian was pregnant with Hong Xiu, she had killed many male cultivators and devoured their essence and bloodline power. Because of this, many people in Hachibara Senkai naturally believed that Hong Lian had killed Hong Xiu's father personally. That was indeed the case. However, if that was the case, Hong Xiu's father was not the only one who had been killed. All of this was directly related to the uniqueness of the Nine-Tailed Fox clan. In fact, there was no such thing as a father in the Nine-Tailed Fox clan. The so-called father was only there to provide the essence and bloodline power needed by the fetus. Originally, all of this was nothing. It was just the uniqueness of the Nine-Tailed Fox clan. However, after the establishment of Hachibara Senkai, Mu Tai found out about the uniqueness of the Nine-Tailed Fox clan. He suddenly had a bold idea, and that was to use the uniqueness of the Nine-Tailed Fox clan to create a supreme talent and strength. As a member of the Nine-Tailed Fox clan, Hong Lian's descendants were naturally gifted and could even surpass the Dragon clan. However, this was not enough. According to Mu Tai's plan, he wanted Hong Lian to devour his essence and bloodline and merge it with the essence and bloodline of two immortal emperors to give birth to the most powerful supreme talent. To be honest, Hong Lian was tempted by Mu Tai's suggestion. Therefore, Mu Tai injected his essence and bloodline power into Hong Lian's womb for the fetus. Mu Tai's goal was to create the most powerful supreme talent, one who could break through the immortal emperor realm. At the beginning, everything went smoothly. However, when Hong Lian was about to give birth, she gave birth to a pair of twins, a boy and a girl. Perhaps it was because of Mu Tai. This was something that no one had expected. Because it was a pair of twins, Mu Tai's ultimate goal was not achieved. Because it was a pair of twins, it was equivalent to sharing the essence and bloodline power that was originally given to one person to both of them. Naturally, this would not work. The result was somewhat unexpected, but since things had already progressed to this stage, how could Mu Tai give up? Therefore, in the next few years, Mu Tai flipped through the ancient books and finally found a way. That was to let Mu Fan refine Hong Xiu alive and take all of her essence qi and bloodline power from her body. In this way, the talents of both of them could be used on one person and Mu Fan would definitely undergo a transformation. As for Hong Xiu's outcome, Mu Tai did not have the intention to care. After all, she would die. According to common sense, Mu Tai should be the father of Hong Xiu and Mu Fan. However, he had never treated them as his own children. Right from the beginning, Mu Tai's ultimate goal was to create a supreme talent who could break through the immortal emperor realm. Back then, everything was planned by the various realm lords. However, the plan could not keep up with the changes. If Hong Lian had only given birth to one child, then things would have gone smoothly. However, Hong Lian gave birth to a pair of twins, Mu Fan and Hong Xiu. They were both her own flesh and blood. In the face of Mu Tai's madness, Hong Lian, as a mother, was naturally unwilling. In the end, she had no choice but to risk her life to protect Hong Xiu. As for Mu Fan, naturally, he would follow Mu Tai. At that time, the various realm lords did not know if they would succeed in the end. In addition, Hong Lian's attitude was incomparably firm, so they could only choose to agree. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1757. At that time, none of the realm lords knew if Mu Tai's idea would succeed. In addition to Hong Lian's insistence, none of them supported Mu Tai. As such, Hong Lian successfully protected Hong Xiu. However, Mu Fan remained in the first realm because of Mu Tai's insistence. Moreover, it was also because of Mu Tai's insistence. Since young, Mu Fan had been instilled with the idea of devouring Hong Xiu. Since young, in Mu Fan's eyes, Hong Xiu was not an independent person. She was a part of him. Sooner or later, he would devour and refine her. It was also because of Mu Tai's influence that Mu Fan's attitude towards Hong Xiu was like this. Moreover, it had been like this since young. So many years had passed. However, this time, after Mu Fan displayed the ability to devour and refine the will of the heavenly way, the Realm Lord's attitudes had changed greatly. In fact, it was not unrelated to what had happened back then. Back then, the Realm Lords did not support Mu Tai because none of them were confident that it would succeed. After all, everything was just a guess. However, it was different now. After Mu Fan displayed the ability to devour the will of the heavenly way, everyone saw hope. Moreover, according to Mu Tai, if Mu Fan could devour Hong Xiu's essence and bloodline power, Mu Fan would definitely be able to devour and refine the will of the heavenly way completely. Previously, they did not see hope. However, now that they saw it, it was not surprising that the Realm Lord's attitudes had changed so drastically. Luo Li sighed lightly and said plainly, "Everything is because of the illusory Supreme Realm." In the eyes of the Sector Lords, Mu Fan and Hong Xiu weren't much. They were just test subjects that were used to verify the existence of the illusory Supreme Realm above the immortal Emperor Realm. If one did not reach the level of Luo Li and the other Realm Lords, it would be difficult to understand the feeling of loneliness at the top. They were already the strongest in Ba Huang, comparable to the will of the heavenly way. Everything in the world was at their fingertip. Everything you could think of, cultivation methods, cultivation resources, spirit stones, and so on, as long as they said a word, anything could be obtained. However, these things were no longer important for people at the level of Luo Li, because they no longer needed them. For example, that extremely precious third-grade immortal skill was a supreme treasure in the eyes of others, but in the eyes of Luo Li and the other Sector Lords, it was merely a piece of scrap paper. The reason for that was because the might of a casual attack from them was not inferior to a rank 3 immortal skill. If they wanted rank 3 immortal skills, they were completely capable of creating their own. In this world, everything was like floating clouds. What the world overlords truly valued was the realm above the immortal Emperor realm. That was a realm that no one has ever reached before, but you could sense that it truly existed. This is everyone's only pursuit, and also their wish. In order to verify the illusory Supreme Realm above the immortal Emperor realm, as well as to find a way to break through, the Sector Lords were willing to pay any price. Everything was for that illusory Supreme Realm. Hearing Luo Li's words, Red Lotus remained silent. She naturally knew what everyone was thinking, because she herself had always been looking for a way to break through that realm. In other words, she was trying to verify whether the immortal Emperor realm was the end of the martial Tao. However, if she had to sacrifice her own daughter for this, then Red Lotus would absolutely not do it. Not for other reasons, but just because of her mother's instinct, Red Lotus couldn't do it. In the past, Red Lotus thought that she was ruthless enough to sacrifice everything in order to verify the illusory Supreme Realm. However, after becoming a mother, Red Lotus discovered that she simply couldn't do it. That was her instinct as a mother, so she couldn't do anything that would harm Red Lotus. They were already filled with regret in their hearts. But now, things could no longer be changed. The various world overlords saw hope, the hope Mu Tai spoke of. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for the various world overlords to stop. This was especially so for Mu Tai. He had persisted for so many years. Right now, it was impossible for him to stop. After a long while, Red Lotus raised her head and looked at Luo Li. Seeing this, Luo Li knew what Red Lotus meant and helplessly shook his head. Give up, some things can't be reversed. You also want to see if Mu Tai's words can really succeed? Red Lotus's eyes were overflowing with coldness. Facing Red Lotus's questioning, Luo Li remained silent for a moment, then without concealing anything, he nodded and said, "After so many years of friendship, I don't want to lie to you." Seeing Luo Li nod, Red Lotus's eyes flashed with a touch of despair. If even Luo Li thought so, then she really couldn't change anything. Sensing the despair in Red Lotus's eyes, Luo Li paused for a moment, then said, "At our level, our former relatives and friends have all turned into a pile of yellow soil. What kinship, friendship, love, all of these have long been numbed to the extreme. The only thing we pursue is the illusory and uncertain martial Tao. Is there a higher realm after the immortal Emperor realm? Is this the end of the martial Tao? You're also an immortal Emperor realm, Almighty, so you should know that this is what we value the most. It's also what we've been pursuing all this time. Therefore, now that we see hope, no one wants to give up, including me." Luo Li spoke his thoughts truthfully. Like the other realm lords, Luo Li also wanted to see if there was a higher cultivation realm after the immortal Emperor realm. However, after all, Luo Li and Red Lotus had a good personal relationship. He didn't want to see Red Lotus get hurt at this time, so he proposed to bring her to the 7th realm. At the same time, Luo Li also didn't want Red Lotus to ruin Mu Tai's plan. It might seem contradictory, but if one thought about it carefully, they would find it to be normal. This was because Luo Li didn't care about Hong Xiu or Mu Fan from the bottom of his heart. If he were to stand at their height, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that everyone was like ants to him. Naturally, he wouldn't feel too emotional over one or two ants. Just as Luo Li and Red Lotus were talking, on the other side, Xiao Chen, who was in the immortal realm, also received a message from Qiu Ru. After a moment of silence with a solemn expression, Xiao Chen finally said to Yu Shujin, "Let's go back to the immortal realm." Something had happened to Red Lotus, and Yi Xiao was seriously injured. After receiving the news, Xiao Chen naturally couldn't sit idly by. No matter how Xiao Chen faced the matter with Red Lotus, since Red Lotus was in danger, Xiao Chen couldn't remain indifferent. It was not for anything else, but because Red Lotus had been good to him. As for the rest, it was a matter for the future. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. Chapter 1758. Xiao Chen deliberately distanced himself from Hong Xiu, but this didn't mean that Xiao Chen could do nothing when Hong Xiu was in danger. Previously, when facing Mu Fan, Xiao Chen didn't stand up because Yi Xiao was present. Even if he didn't do anything, Hong Xiu wouldn't be in danger. But this time was different. Yi Xiao was seriously injured and Hong Xiu had been brought back to the 1st realm by Mu Fan. Therefore, Xiao Chen couldn't remain indifferent anymore. Yu Shujin didn't know what was wrong with Xiao Chen, but after hearing Xiao Chen's order, she didn't ask any more questions. She turned around and went to prepare. Xiao Chen wanted to leave the 7 Realms continent in advance. Although many experts in the 7 Realms continent were puzzled, no one dared to ask. They respectfully escorted Xiao Chen to the starship. When the starship soared into the sky and disappeared, the experts of the 7 Realms continent heaved a sigh of relief. The starship rushed towards the immortal realm continent. Xiao Chen had ordered Yu Shujin not to delay along the way. The starship flew all the way to the 7 Realms continent. At the same time, while Xiao Chen was returning to the immortal realm continent, Hong Xiu, who was brought back to the 1st realm by Mu Fan, was under house arrest in a courtyard of Mu Fan's cave mansion. Hong Xiu sat on a stone bench in the courtyard with an ice-cold expression. Her pair of beautiful eyes stared fixedly at Mu Fan, who was in front of her. However, Mu Fan did not seem to mind Hong Xiu's cold gaze. He sneered as he drank his tea. "I've told you since you were a child that you can't escape from my palm in this lifetime. I've let you go crazy outside for so many years. It's enough." Under Mu Tai's influence, Mu Fan always felt that Hong Xiu should be a part of him. Only after devouring and refining Hong Xiu would Mu Fan be complete. Of course, this was what Mu Tai told him. From Mu Tai's point of view, Mu Fan was incomplete before he devoured and refined Hong Xiu. He was just like a disabled person. Previously, due to various reasons, including the obstruction of the other sector lords, Mu Tai and Mu Fan simply did not have the opportunity to lay their hands on Hong Xiu. However, it was different now. After he revealed his ability to devour and refine the will of the heavenly way, the attitudes of the other sector lords had completely changed. The few sector lords all stood on his side. Hong Xiu and Hong Lian, the mother and daughter pair, couldn't change anything by themselves. Hearing Mu Fan's words, Hong Xiu snorted coldly and ignored Mu Fan. Seeing Hong Xiu in such a state, Mu Fan was not angry. He only needed to wait a few more days for his father to be ready. Then, he would be able to devour and refine Hong Xiu. At that time, he would be able to obtain Hong Xiu's bloodline power and undergo a qualitative change. Mu Fan and Hong Xiu were twins, so there was no difference between their bloodline power. Therefore, Mu Fan was able to absorb Hong Xiu's bloodline power. If it was someone else, their bloodline power would repel each other and it would be impossible for them to absorb Hong Xiu's bloodline power. Standing up, Mu Fan glanced at Hong Xiu indifferently and said coldly, "Accept your fate. Don't make any unnecessary struggles. My good sister, no one can save you." After speaking, Mu Fan turned and left without waiting for Hong Xiu's reply. Following Mu Fan's departure, Hong Xiu's eyes flowed with tears. "Is there no one who can save me?" she thought in despair. However, Xiao Chen's figure quickly appeared in Hong Xiu's mind. She did not know why, but she firmly believed that Xiao Chen would come to save her. There was also Xiao Chen. When she thought of Xiao Chen, a glimmer of hope appeared in Hong Xiu's heart. However, this glimmer of hope quickly disappeared. With the current situation of Hachibra Senkai, how could Xiao Chen save her? Even her mother could not do anything. How could Xiao Chen do anything? Could Xiao Chen fight against the sector lords? Hong Xiu's heart sank again. At this moment, it was as if she had accepted her fate. Since she was young, Mu Fan had been her nightmare. Now that it had ended in this way, it was not bad. She only hoped that she would not meet this fellow in her next life. There was a trace of death in her heart. However, at the same time, Hong Xiu was reluctant to leave. She was reluctant to leave her mother and Xiao Chen. Tears flowed silently from her eyes. Hong Xiu sat in the courtyard in a daze. Xiao Chen's face appeared in her mind. At this moment, Hong Xiu really wanted to rush into Xiao Chen's arms and cry without restraint. However, it was impossible. Xiao Chen would not be able to save her. In order to save her, he would have to fight against the entire Hachibra Senkai. How was that possible? The wills of the sector lords would not be changed easily. With the support of the sector lords, Mu Fan could do whatever he wanted. Moreover, in the eyes of the sector lords, what was Hong Xiu? Xiao Chen. Hong Xiu muttered Xiao Chen's name softly. In the next few days, Hong Xiu was like a living corpse. She had given up. No one could save her. Mu Fan saw the changes in Hong Xiu and was secretly happy. Since Hong Xiu had given up, it would be even easier to refine her bloodline power. He ordered people to watch Hong Xiu 24 hours a day and did not allow her to leave the courtyard. A few days passed. On this day, Mu Fan returned from Mu Tai's place. Mu Tai told him that they could begin the next day. As long as Mu Fan could absorb Hong Xiu's bloodline power, he would definitely become the hope of the Hachibra Senkai. He would be able to break through the illusory supreme realm and create a new era for the world. Mu Fan returned to his cave abode excitedly. However, as soon as he entered his cave abode, he saw a genius from the first realm running towards him in a hurry. "What's wrong?" Mu Fan frowned when he saw how flustered the genius was. Faced with Mu Fan's question, the genius took a deep breath and replied truthfully, I heard that Yi Xiao asked for help from the seventh realm's heir. Also, I heard from the other realms that Hong Xiu seems to like Xiao Chen a lot. It was no secret that Yi Xiao had asked for help from Xiao Chen, so there was no way it could be kept a secret. The relationship between Xiao Chen and Hong Xiu was even more obvious. One could easily find out by simply asking around. Hearing this, Mu Fan didn't get angry. Instead, he sneered. Asking for help from Xiao Chen? Ha, so what? Does Xiao Chen really dare to come to the first realm and ask for Hong Xiu? He doesn't have the ability to do that. If he's smart, Xiao Chen will pretend that he doesn't know anything. Then, I can let him go. Even Hong Lian could not stop him. So what if Xiao Chen came? Also, would Xiao Chen dare to come to the first realm and ask for Hong Xiu? After all, the first realm was not Xiao Chen's seventh realm. He could not be so presumptuous. Mu Fan felt that Xiao Chen would not dare to come to the first realm and ask for Hong Xiu. However, Xiao Chen had already entered the immortal realm. He could see the 8 peaks from afar. Standing on the deck, Xiao Chen said to Yu Shujin, "Go straight to the first peak. Please add vote recommend." Chapter 1759. Mu Fan felt that Xiao Chen wouldn't dare to come to the first realm personally. After all, even Red Lotus couldn't change the current situation, let alone Xiao Chen. He wasn't worried at all. At the same time, in the 8th realm, after a few days of recuperation, Yi Xiao was able to walk again. However, her injuries weren't fully healed. Yi Xiao sat alone in the pavilion in the courtyard with a worried expression. Brother Xiao Chen. Facing such a situation, Yi Xiao, or rather, Hong Xiu, could only rely on Xiao Chen. But how was Xiao Chen going to save Hong Xiu? Yi Xiao did not think too much about it before, as he only wanted to save Hong Xiu. However, over the past few days, Yi Xiao had carefully thought about the current situation. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that the possibility of Xiao Chen saving Hong Xiu was very slim. After all the sector lords were on Mu Fan's side. If he wanted to save Hong Xiu, it would mean that he would have to go against all the sector lords. Even Hong Lian couldn't do such a thing, let alone Xiao Chen. Just like Hong Xiu, she was in despair. Could it be that she could only watch as Hong Xiu was devoured and refined by Mu Fan? Yi Zhao's heart sank. On the other hand, Red Lotus' situation wasn't any better. She heard from Luoli that Mu Tai was ready and could begin tomorrow. When the time came, Hong Xiu would be completely devoured and refined by Mu Fan. It was imaginable what would happen to Hong Xiu after she lost her blood essence and bloodline power. She wanted to save Hong Xiu even if she had to risk her life. But it was a pity that Luoli didn't give her the chance. Although he wouldn't hurt Red Lotus, Luoli wasn't willing to let Red Lotus ruin Mu Tai's plan. Just as Luoli said, he didn't object to Mu Tai's actions. He couldn't let Hong Lian interfere because this was related to that illusory supreme realm. Whether they could find a way to break through that illusory supreme realm depended on whether Mu Tai's plan could succeed or not. If they succeeded, it would undoubtedly open a door to a new world for everyone. This was what the sector lords had been searching for all this while. In order to open this door to a new world, they wouldn't mind even if they had to pay a huge price. In the same bamboo garden, Luoli and Hong Lian sat opposite each other. Neither of them spoke, but it was not difficult to tell from Hong Lian's expression what she was feeling right now. It was very difficult to describe just what she was feeling. Sorrow, powerlessness, sadness, anger, perhaps all of these. It would begin tomorrow, and the various sector lords were all waiting to see if the final result was as Mu Tai had said. As long as Mu Fan devoured Hong Xiu's essence and bloodline power, he would be able to refine the power of the will of the heavenly way in the first wilderness. Just as the various sector lords were waiting for the final result, Xiao Chen's spaceship slowly landed on the first peak. Xiao Chen's spaceship slowly landed on the main square of the palace that belonged to the first realm. Standing on the deck, Yu Shujin and the other geniuses from the 7th realm didn't know what Xiao Chen was going to do. As the spaceship landed steadily, Xiao Chen took the lead and strode down from the spaceship. Xiao Chen's expression was cold. Just as Xiao Chen stepped down from the spaceship, an expert from the 1st realm came up to him and said indifferently, "This is the 1st realm." He naturally recognized Xiao Chen. He was the heir of the 7th realm. In the Hachibre Sunkai, there were probably not many people who didn't know him. Hearing this, Xiao Chen only said indifferently, "Ask Mu Fan to come and see me." Xiao Chen had only come here for Hongxiu, so he had nothing to say to this expert. However, after hearing Xiao Chen's words, the expert sneered coldly. "Xiao Chen, not everyone can see our heir. Moreover, our heir is going into seclusion recently. He won't see anyone. Please go back." As soon as the Celestial Realm expert finished speaking, 2 young geniuses from the 1st world also appeared on the scene. These 2 young geniuses were naturally Mu Fan's subordinate. Mu Fan naturally knew that Xiao Chen had swaggered into the 1st realm, but he didn't plan to show himself. In Mu Fan's opinion, the situation was now in his hands. Even Honglian couldn't change anything. How could Xiao Chen do it? Therefore, he didn't want to see Xiao Chen at all. He just casually sent 2 young geniuses from the 1st realm to send Xiao Chen away. The 2 of them came directly in front of Xiao Chen and looked at Xiao Chen with disdain. One of them said indifferently, "Xiao Chen, senior brother Mu Fan said that one should know when to advance and when to retreat. You should be clear about the current situation. Don't go against the flow." This could be considered a warning from Mu Fan to Xiao Chen. However, hearing this, Xiao Chen glanced at the person who spoke with disdain. In the face of Xiao Chen's contempt, a trace of coldness flashed in the young man's eyes. He was about to reprimand Xiao Chen, but a blood-red sword suddenly appeared in Xiao Chen's hand. With the dustless sword in hand, Xiao Chen didn't say anything and directly slashed out. The sword radiance flashed, and in the face of Xiao Chen's attack, the young genius who was only at the quasi-sage realm couldn't block it. Without any resistance, the young genius was beheaded by Xiao Chen. The young genius' head flew into the air. Even in death, he didn't expect that he would be so easily beheaded by Xiao Chen. Without any warning or hesitation, Xiao Chen killed the man with a single stroke of his sword. The other young prodigy and the immortal realm cultivator stood rooted to the ground in shock. It was not until Xiao Chen's cold voice rang out that the 2 of them came back to their senses. "Whether I go against the trend or not is my business. However, you are not qualified to speak to me. For the last time, ask Mu Fan to come out." Once again, Xiao Chen drew his sword and killed someone without saying a word. Yu Shujin and the others, who were standing behind Xiao Chen, were already used to this. However, even so, everyone's faces were still grave. Because this time, Xiao Chen had killed someone from the 1st realm. Moreover, until now, Yu Shujin and the others still didn't know what had happened. Why did Xiao Chen rush back and go straight to the 1st realm? Yu Shujin and the others didn't know what had happened, so they were extremely puzzled. Ignoring everyone's puzzlement, Xiao Chen looked indifferently at the young genius from the 1st realm and the 1st realm's expert at the 1st realm. At first, the 1st realm was stunned, but soon, the 1st realm's expert recovered from his shock. He glared at Xiao Chen fiercely and shouted, "Xiao Chen, how dare you? This is the 1st realm, not your 7th realm. How dare you kill someone here? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 1760. No one had expected Xiao Chen to draw his sword and kill someone. Faced with the angry roar of the immortal state expert, Xiao Chen's expression did not change at all. He just said indifferently, "Why wouldn't I dare?" With that, Xiao Chen slashed out again. The blood-red sword light streaked across the sky and instantly hit another young genius from the 1st realm. They were all only at the quasi-sage realm. With such cultivation, they were naturally unable to resist Xiao Chen's sword. Just like the previous person, after being hit by Xiao Chen's sword, this genius died immediately. Another person was killed. Seeing this, the immortal state expert from the first realm twitched the corners of his mouth unconsciously. This was simply a madman. Killing one was not enough, he had killed another. A look of horror flashed in his eyes. Facing Xiao Chen, this immortal state expert from the first realm understood that this guy in front of him was a person who did not care about the rules at all. He was a madman, absolutely a madman. After killing two young geniuses from the first realm in a row, Xiao Chen finally turned his gaze to this person and said expressionlessly, "It's your turn now. If I don't see Mu Fan again, you will die." Xiao Chen was completely uninterested in dealing with these crooks. Moreover, to rescue Hongxiu, he could only start with Mu Fan. These people were simply useless. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, this immortal state expert felt cold sweat on his back. At this time, he no longer doubted Xiao Chen's words. Since Xiao Chen had said so, he had no doubt that Xiao Chen would definitely kill him. As for whether he could contend with Xiao Chen, this immortal state expert did not even think about it. What a joke! Although he and Xiao Chen were both at the immortal state, the gap between the two of them was too big. He unconsciously took 2 steps back. Just as this immortal state expert was feeling frightened, a cold shout rang out. Immediately, a white-haired elder appeared on the scene. "Xiao Chen, this is not your 7th realm. You'd better not cross the line." This old man was also an expert from the first world. He had the cultivation base of an immortal venerable. He stared coldly at Xiao Chen. Upon hearing his words, Xiao Chen replied with a nonchalant smile. "Immortal venerable realm? Do you think you can stop me?" Could the white-haired old man stop Xiao Chen with his celestial venerable realm cultivation? The white-haired old man did not get angry when he heard this. Instead, he said with an icy expression, "If I can't, there will naturally be others who can. Xiao Chen, do you really think that you can behave atrociously in my first world?" With Xiao Chen's strength, he naturally couldn't behave atrociously in the first world. After all, there were still immortal emperors in the first world and Mu Tai, the world lord of the immortal emperor realm. Facing these people, Xiao Chen had no chance of winning. However, Xiao Chen didn't come here to behave atrociously in the first world. Instead, he came here to save Hongxiu. As for now, Xiao Chen only had one goal in mind, and that was to meet Mu Fan. Everything would be decided after meeting Mu Fan. As soon as the white-haired old man finished speaking, Mu Fan appeared in front of Xiao Chen. Mu Fan, who was still wearing a black robe, suddenly appeared. His gaze was locked onto Xiao Chen, and a cold smile flashed across his eyes. "Xiao Chen, I thought you were someone who knew how to adapt to circumstances." "Unfortunately, I'm not one of them," Xiao Chen replied with a cold smile. What Mu Fan meant by sensible was nothing more than ignoring these matters. But was it possible? Given the relationship between Hongxiu and Xiao Chen, and how Hongxiu had taken care of Xiao Chen during this period of time, how could Xiao Chen just watch Hongxiu fall into the fire pit without doing anything? Xiao Chen might be a lunatic, but he was definitely not a heartless person. There was no doubt about that. Seeing that Xiao Chen was not afraid at all, a faint murderous intent spread out from Mu Fan's body. He looked at Xiao Chen and said word by word, "You want to save Hongxiu, but do you have the ability?" "You'll know if you try," Xiao Chen replied. As soon as they finished speaking, both of them chose to attack without hesitation. Xiao Chen slashed out with his sword, while Mu Fan punched out with his fist. He had been injured for some time, but a pair of black gloves had appeared on his body. The fist and the sword collided fiercely. With a muffled bang, the ground cracked. This was the main square of the first world. However, at this time, Xiao Chen and Mu Fan chose to attack without any hesitation. Previously, Qiu Ru had told Xiao Chen that Mu Fan was a lunatic who would do anything to achieve his goals. He was extremely sinister. However, compared to Mu Fan, Xiao Chen was not much better. After all, Xiao Chen was also a lunatic. Just like Mu Fan, he was a lunatic who did not care about the rules at all. Now that the two lunatics had met, they naturally did not care about where they were and whether they could attack each other. They did not care about the so-called rules at all. As soon as the attack landed, both of them could be said to be evenly matched. However, this attack was obviously just a test. Neither of them used any immortal skills. It was just a casual attack. Xiao Chen did not retreat at all. After the attack landed, he looked at Mu Fan and said indifferently, "I heard that you devoured the power of the will of the heavenly way. Looks like it's useless." On the way back to the immortal realm, Qiu Ru sent another letter to Xiao Chen. She told Xiao Chen about the Hachibra Senkai. Naturally, she also mentioned that Mu Fan could devour the power of the will of the heavenly way. Since he had devoured the will of the heavenly way, Xiao Chen thought that Mu Fan's strength was not much stronger than the other heirs of Kunlun. After hearing Xiao Chen's words, the murderous intent in Mu Fan's eyes intensified. He looked at Xiao Chen with cold eyes and said coldly, "You're courting death." Mu Fan originally wanted to kill Xiao Chen. After all, Mu Fan already knew about the matter between him and Hong Xiu. Moreover, Xiao Chen's arrogant words made Mu Fan's murderous intent even more intense. After he finished speaking, Xiao Chen had no intention of replying. He slashed out with his sword again and moved his feet. In an instant, he charged towards Mu Fan. The two of them started fighting. As for Yu Shujin and the others at the side, they were still in a daze. After rushing back to the immortal realm, Xiao Chen went straight to the first realm and killed two young geniuses from the first realm. Now, he was fighting with Mu Fan. Looking at Xiao Chen's attitude, it was obvious that he was going to kill Mu Fan. "Senior brother, what happened?" A genius from the seventh realm looked at Yu Shujin and asked in confusion. Hearing this, Yu Shujin shook her head helplessly and said, "I don't know either." Yu Shujin naturally did not know what had happened. However, based on the previous conversation, she could guess that it had something to do with Hong Xiu. It seemed that Hong Xiu had encountered some danger and Xiao Chen had come to save her. Please add it to your collection. Monthly vote recommend it. Chapter 1761. He guessed that this matter might have something to do with Hong Xiu, but so what if he guessed it? Yu Shujin definitely could not intervene in the battle between Xiao Chen and Mu Fan. With his cultivation level, he was no match for the two of them. Xiao Chen and Mu Fan fought unscrupulously in the First Realm Master's Square. They did not care about where they were and the so-called rules. The aftermath of the battle between the two quickly destroyed the entire First Realm Master's Square. This was because the First Realm Master's Square was extremely hard. Otherwise, if it was any other place, it would have been completely destroyed by the battle between the two. On the ground, cracks crisscrossed. These cracks were torn apart by the aftermath of the battle between the two. This was not the first time he had fought with a Hachibra Senkai heir. However, in Xiao Chen's opinion, Mu Fan's strength was actually not stronger than Fu Rui's. The strength of the few heirs were now on par. No one was much stronger than the other. After a fierce battle, Xiao Chen and Mu Fan did not gain any advantage. However, the two of them had no intention of stopping. Mu Fan turned his fist into a claw and clawed at Xiao Chen. The bloodline power of the nine-tailed demon fox soared into the sky. A purple claw print attacked Xiao Chen fiercely. The nine-tailed demon fox clan had the bloodline power of the demon clan and the beast clan. It was a mutation caused by the fusion of the two clans. At this time, when Mu Fan's claw fell, its power was no weaker than a second-grade immortal technique. Facing Mu Fan's claw, Xiao Chen was not careless. He slashed out with his sword and instantly displayed the nine-nether sword technique. The blood-red sword light flashed and collided violently with each other. After a loud bang, Xiao Chen and Mu Fan seemed to have agreed to it. Their hands did not stop moving and their attacks were like raindrops as they crazily bombarded each other. The purple claw print and the blood-red sword light constantly collided. The sky was filled with sword light and claw prints. The terrifying pressure changed the color of the sky. The two of them did not hold back at all in such a terrifying exchange. The biting cold aftershocks were like sharp knives that cut open numerous wounds on their spiritual wound. The fierce battle continued. However, at this moment, a wave of pressure descended from the sky. Just this wave of pressure alone caused Xiao Chen and Mu Fan to lose their ability to fight. To be able to have such pressure, he was undoubtedly a sector lord. Sure enough, after forcibly stopping the fierce battle between the two, Mu Tai's figure appeared in the air, blocking in front of Xiao Chen and Mu Fan. There wasn't any anger on his face. Instead, he was calm as he scanned the messy main square. Mu Tai first glanced at Mu Fan, then at Xiao Chen as he spoke. Xiao Chen, this is the first realm. It was a simple sentence, but the meaning behind it was obvious. Hearing this, Xiao Chen did not reply. However, he also had no intention of retreating. He just stood there quietly. Seeing that Xiao Chen was indifferent, Mu Tai frowned slightly. Then, he said in a low voice, "Let's go. Bring your people back to the 7th realm. I can pretend that nothing happened today. I want to see Hongxiu." Hearing Mu Tai's words, Xiao Chen said firmly. He knew that he was no match for Mu Tai. However, Xiao Chen could not just retreat like this. Moreover, Xiao Chen had already thought of this situation before he came. He had already heard about the current situation of Hachibara Senkai from Chiuru. Therefore, Xiao Chen was also very clear that if he wanted to save Hongxiu, he naturally had to make use of everyone's help. To put it bluntly, if he could not make everyone change their minds, then Xiao Chen would definitely not be able to save Hongxiu. This was a problem that could not be avoided. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, a cold glint flashed in Mu Tai's eyes. In his opinion, he had already given Xiao Chen enough face. However, Xiao Chen did not know when to back down. Not only did he cause a ruckus in the 1st realm, but he also threatened to save Hongxiu. With a cold glint in his eyes, Mu Tai looked at Xiao Chen and shouted coldly. "Xiao Chen, do you think that I can't do anything to you?" It was naturally very easy for Mu Tai to deal with Xiao Chen. As soon as he finished speaking, Mu Tai gently struck out with his palm. Immediately, a terrifying pressure surged towards Xiao Chen from all directions like a huge wave. Under this immense pressure, Xiao Chen could not even move a finger. Hongxiu's matter has already been settled. Everything is for the sake of Hachibara Senkai. It is not something that you can change alone. In addition, since you caused a ruckus in the 1st realm today, I will teach you a lesson on behalf of Luoli, Mu Tai said flatly as he struck out. He would not go so far as to kill Xiao Chen. After all, Xiao Chen was the heir of the 7th realm. Mu Tai still had to give face to Luoli. However, there was no problem in punishing him. However, just as Mu Tai was about to strike and teach Xiao Chen a lesson, Luoli suddenly appeared beside Xiao Chen. With a gentle wave of his hand, he dispersed the pressure around Xiao Chen. "Mu Tai, let's forget about today's matter. I will take Xiao Chen back," Luoli said flatly as he looked at Mu Tai. Luoli appeared. Hearing this, Mu Tai snorted coldly and replied, "Only this time." He had originally wanted to teach Xiao Chen a lesson, but Luoli had appeared. Mu Tai did not insist. After all, Mu Tai did not care about this matter and would not get angry over such a small matter. It was considered giving face to Luoli. However, no one expected that Xiao Chen would suddenly look at Luoli and speak. "Sector Lord, I want to save Hongxiu." Xiao Chen's words caused Mu Tai's expression to darken again. In Mu Tai's opinion, Xiao Chen did not know what was good for him. Did he really think that the sector lords did not have a temper? Not only Mu Tai, but even Luo Li's expression darkened. Hongxiu's matter was agreed upon by all the sector lords, including Luo Li. Xiao Chen's actions were undoubtedly going against the wishes of all the sector lords. Indeed, he did not know what was good for him. Furthermore, Xiao Chen's actions were not only against one of the sector lords, but against all the sector lords other than Hongxiu. The consequences were obvious. Xiao Chen naturally knew the consequences of his actions. Furthermore, Xiao Chen was not a fool. He had already thought of a way to deal with it. Therefore, when he saw Mu Tai and Luo Li's expressions darken, Xiao Chen calmly said, Hongxiu's matter is only because Mu Fan could devour and refine the will of the heavenly way. What if I can do the same? Will I be able to let Hongxiu go? When Xiao Chen said this, Mu Tai and Luo Li were both stunned. Then, their gazes involuntarily locked onto Xiao Chen. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1762. Hongxiu's incident and the change in attitude of the various sector lords was all because Mu Fan had displayed his ability to refine the will of the heavenly way. Because of this, the various sector lords were all on Mu Fan's side. However, if Xiao Chen could also possess such an ability, then things would be different. This was because to the various sector lords, what they wanted was to pursue the illusory supreme realm. Right now, Mu Fan could be said to be the key that had the greatest hope of opening that new door. However, fundamentally speaking, the various world lords didn't care who the key was. As long as they could open that door and allow them to understand and even come in contact with that supreme realm, that would be enough. This was the only method that Xiao Chen could think of. Otherwise, with the various sector lords supporting him, it would be impossible for Xiao Chen to save Hongxiu. Xiao Chen had no chance of fighting against the various sector lords. If even Hong Lian couldn't change the outcome, Xiao Chen would have no hope if he fought head-on. Mu Tai and Luo Li locked their gazes on Xiao Chen, as though they wanted to see through him. Facing the gazes of two sector lords, Xiao Chen was naturally under a lot of pressure. However, he couldn't show the slightest bit of guilt at this moment. Therefore, Xiao Chen's expression didn't change as he allowed the two of them to size him up. Mu Tai and Luo Li didn't speak immediately. Instead, it was Mu Fan who sneered, Xiao Chen, I thought you had some method. I didn't expect it to be so clumsy. You can also refine the will of the heavenly way? What a joke. Wanting to refine the will of the heavenly way was obviously not an easy task. Otherwise, why hadn't anyone succeeded in so many years? Including the various sector lords, it wasn't that they hadn't personally tried, but they had all failed. Up until now, only Mu Fan had displayed such an ability. Furthermore, Mu Fan could only absorb a small amount of the will of the heavenly way's power every time. Mu Fan couldn't withstand more than that. It could be said that if the current Mu Fan wanted to refine the will of the heavenly way, it would probably take him 1,000 years to refine it completely. The speed was very, very slow. However, even so, the various sector lords saw hope. Therefore, during this period of time, the various sector lords could be said to be extremely supportive of Mu Fan. The best way to break this situation was undoubtedly to find someone who could replace Mu Fan. Everything was the same. Once there was a substitute, no one would place everything on one person. At that time, the attitude of the sector lords would definitely change. This was Xiao Chen's plan. However, after a while, Luo Li looked at Xiao Chen seriously and said, Xiao Chen, I know you want to save Hongxiu, but there are some things that can't be said carelessly. Do you understand? This was the first time Luo Li had such a serious expression. Luo Li didn't care about other things, but when it came to this matter, he couldn't be careless. This was because this was the most important issue for the various sector lords. If anyone dared to joke about this matter, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, if Xiao Chen didn't have the confidence and only spoke carelessly because he wanted to save Hongxiu, then even if Xiao Chen was the heir of the seventh realm, he wouldn't be able to escape punishment in the end. It would definitely be a heavy punishment. At that time, even Luoli wouldn't be able to save Xiao Chen. At most, he would be able to save Xiao Chen's life. That was already the limit. He warned Xiao Chen sternly. However, hearing this, Xiao Chen said without hesitation, "I can." Xiao Chen didn't seem to be joking at all. Seeing this, Luoli wanted to say something, but before he could speak, Mu Tai spoke first. "Gather the others." Mu Tai's meaning was clear. He wanted all the sector lords to come and discuss this matter. Xiao Chen said that he could also refine the will of the heavenly way. This was something that no one could guarantee, so they all came together to discuss this matter. Very quickly, all the sector lords gathered in the main hall of the first realm, including Hong Lian. However, she sat on the main seat of the high platform and looked down at Xiao Chen with a complicated expression. She even had a tinge of gratitude. Hong Lian wasn't a fool. She naturally knew that Xiao Chen had said this because he wanted to save Hongxiu. However, this method, how should she put it, was completely a gamble. The chances of winning could be said to be almost zero. All the sector lords gathered in the hall. At the same time, they all knew what had happened. The fourth realm lord, Qin Yun, was the first to look at Xiao Chen and ask in a low voice, "Xiao Chen, I don't care what your intentions are, but seeing that you're the heir of the seventh realm, I can give you one last chance. Give up." They had tried countless times before, but no one had succeeded. Only now did Mu Fan display this ability. Therefore, the sector lords didn't have much hope for Xiao Chen. Hearing Qin Yun's words, Xiao Chen shook his head and said, "I won't give up." Xiao Chen wasn't willing to give up. Seeing this, the third realm lord, Ning Su, said indifferently, "All right. In that case, Xiao Chen, we can let you try. However, if you fail, you'll have to bear the corresponding price. Even if Luoli pleads for you and you can keep your life, your cultivation will definitely go down the drain. In that case, are you still willing to try?" They could give Xiao Chen a chance to try, but this chance wasn't given for free. It was like gambling. Xiao Chen had to take out the corresponding chip. Ning Su's words were very clear. For the sake of Luoli, they could let Xiao Chen live, but his cultivation would definitely be destroyed. In other words, if Xiao Chen wanted to prove himself and obtain this chance, he had to gamble with his cultivation. This gamble was huge. Hearing Ning Su's words, Mu Fan, who was standing beside Xiao Chen, laughed coldly. His eyes were filled with mockery. What was the difference between losing one's cultivation and death? Would Xiao Chen dare to accept such a huge gamble? Following Ning Su's words, the gazes of the sector lords all fell on Xiao Chen, waiting for Xiao Chen's final reply. Facing the gazes of the sector lords, Xiao Chen's expression was still calm, and his voice was firm. "All right, but I have a condition. If I succeed, from today onwards, Mu Fan can't attack Hongxiu, nor can he harass her. If I lose, there's no need for the sector lords to destroy my cultivation. I'll just kill myself on the spot." Using his own life to gamble, Xiao Chen also stated his condition. Hearing this, the sector lords present looked at each other, their eyes filled with a tinge of contemplation. It was obvious that they were secretly weighing the pros and cons in their hearts. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1763. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, all the realm lords fell into deep thought. Xiao Chen was willing to gamble with his life to save Hongxiu, and to the realm lords, there wasn't much of a loss. It was just waiting for a few days. At that time, if Xiao Chen succeeded, it wouldn't be a problem to let Hongxiu go. If Xiao Chen failed, everything would still proceed according to the previous plan and there wouldn't be much of an impact. It wasn't that they couldn't accept Xiao Chen's suggestion. After a moment of silence, Mu Tai was the first to speak. Xiao Chen, are you sure you want to do this? You have to know that there's no turning back. I'm sure. Hearing this, Xiao Chen nodded seriously. All right, since that's the case, we'll do as you say. If you succeed, from today onwards, Mu Fan won't harass Hongxiu anymore. But if you fail, then you can end it yourself, Mu Tai said. Even Mu Tai nodded in agreement. In fact, this wasn't strange. After all, Mu Tai's true goal was to find the possibility of breaking through to a higher realm. Since Xiao Chen wanted to try, then let him try. In any case, success or failure didn't affect the Realm Lords much. Mu Tai nodded in agreement. Next, Yi Xian, Qin Yun, Ning Su, and the other Realm Lords all nodded in agreement. In the end, only Red Lotus and Luoli remained. Everyone looked at Luoli and Red Lotus. Facing their gazes, Luoli looked at Xiao Chen and helplessly smiled bitterly. I have no objections. Luoli actually wanted to stop Xiao Chen, but he also knew Xiao Chen's character. It was almost impossible for Xiao Chen to give up. Thus, Luoli could only choose to nod in agreement. Luoli also didn't have any objections. In the end, only Red Lotus was left. She looked deeply at Xiao Chen and nodded in silence. The Realm Lords all agreed to Xiao Chen's request. In the end, Mu Tai said, "Then let's start tomorrow. Xiao Chen, during this period of time, don't worry. We won't do anything to Hongxiu. Until you fail or succeed, Hongxiu won't be in any danger." This should be Mu Tai's guarantee to Xiao Chen. Hearing this, Xiao Chen bowed towards the Realm Lords and thanked them. Xiao Chen used this method to temporarily save Hongxiu. Of course, the final outcome. If he failed, not only would Hongxiu's fate, but Xiao Chen himself. Mu Fan looked coldly at Xiao Chen and thought in his heart. Courting death. From Mu Fan's point of view, Xiao Chen was courting death. How could it be so easy to refine the will of the heavenly way? If Xiao Chen didn't succeed, he and Hongxiu would both die. After the decision was made, the Realm Lords left one after another. The original plan was put on hold. Hongxiu was temporarily safe, but the final outcome would depend on Xiao Chen's success. They followed Luoli back to the 7th realm. Along the way, Luoli didn't say anything. It was only when they reached the 7th realm's palace that Luoli finally opened his mouth. Xiao Chen, I know you want to save Hongxiu, but you have to know that there are many things you can't do. It's stupid to do something you know can't be done. Luoli's words clearly showed that he didn't think highly of Xiao Chen. He felt that Xiao Chen's chances of success were very low. In that case, not only would he not be able to save Hongxiu, he might even lose his life. However, after hearing Luoli's words, Xiao Chen didn't express his opinion. In short, Hongxiu was worth it for him to risk his life to save her. Xiao Chen would treat those who were nice to him with double the kindness. That was Xiao Chen's motto all along. After bidding farewell to Luoli, Xiao Chen brought Luan Luan back to his cave residence. On the other side, in the 1st realm, Mu Fan also came to the courtyard where Hongxiu was staying. A cold glint flashed in Mu Fan's eyes when he saw Hongxiu sitting alone in the courtyard in a daze. Then, he sneered and said, "My good sister, you've found yourself a good husband. Xiao Chen has returned." Ever since Mu Fan brought her back to the 1st realm, Hongxiu had been lifeless and didn't care about anything. However, after hearing that Xiao Chen had returned, Hongxiu's eyes clearly showed a trace of emotion. Sensing the change in Hongxiu's expression, Mu Fan continued to sneer. "Xiao Chen is indeed loyal to you. You still don't know that in order to save you, Xiao Chen made a bet with the world sovereigns." Mu Fan recounted Xiao Chen's story to Graceful Red. When she heard that Xiao Chen had actually used his own life to gamble with the various world masters, Graceful Red could no longer remain calm. Her pair of beautiful eyes stared coldly at Mu Fan as she spoke coldly. "I want to see the world sovereigns." Since Xiao Chen used his life to save her, Hongxiu naturally didn't want Xiao Chen to be in any danger. Therefore, Hongxiu immediately requested to see the world sovereigns and cancel the bet. Facing Hongxiu's cold expression, Mu Fan didn't mind at all. He sneered and said, "My good sister, it's impossible for you to go back on your words. Tomorrow, Shao Qin will begin to refine the will of the heavenly way. If he fails, he will definitely die. As for you, it's fine to let you live for a few more days." Haha. After saying that, Mu Fan turned around and left the courtyard, leaving Hongxiu alone in the courtyard. She was indeed touched that Shao Qin came to save her. However, when she thought about how Shao Qin used her life as a bet, she was filled with worry. If Shao Qin failed to refine the will of the heavenly way, Shao Qin would definitely die. Therefore, Hongxiu didn't want Shao Qin to die. She didn't want Shao Qin to be in any danger. Therefore, after Mu Fan left, Hongxiu's eyes turned red and she muttered softly, "Why are you so foolish? Why did you use your life as a bet?" Shao Qin had used his life to save Hongxiu. This was the only way to change the situation and save Hongxiu. However, at the same time, it was also the most dangerous and foolish method. Hongxiu wanted to stop all of this. However, with her strength, it was impossible for her to do so. She could only watch as the situation developed. Hongxiu was extremely worried because of Shao Qin. She didn't even want Shao Qin to save her. However, Shao Qin was in his cave residence and was preparing for tomorrow. He didn't hesitate at all. Shao Qin couldn't watch Hongxiu die like this. Of course, the reason why Shao Qin dared to use his life as a bet was not because he wasn't confident. And where did this confidence come from? It came from Luan Luan. In the room, Shao Qin looked at Luan Luan, who was sitting cross-legged with her eyes closed. There was a trace of nervousness in her eyes, as if she was waiting for something. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1764. Looking at Luan Luan, who was sitting cross-legged with her eyes closed, Shao Qin's eyes carried a trace of nervousness. Since he dared to gamble with his life, with Shao Qin's personality, he naturally wouldn't be unprepared. Shao Qin knew how difficult it would be to refine the will of the heavenly way. Although he didn't know how Mu Fan was able to do it, Shao Qin didn't think that he would be able to succeed if even the realm lords were unable to refine the will of the heavenly way. Therefore, Luan Luan was Shao Qin's true confidence. When he first met Luan Luan, Shao Qin saw her birth. It could be said that she was born together with the heavens and earth. Luan Luan's identity was very mysterious. Even Shao Qin didn't know where she came from. However, Shao Qin could feel that other than spiritual energy, there was a mysterious power in her body. This power was somewhat similar to the power of a warrior's bloodline. He had never seen such a power before. However, this power seemed to be somewhat similar to the power of the will of the heavenly way. Therefore, Luan Luan was Shao Qin's true trump card. After accompanying Luan Luan for more than 4 hours, it was already nighttime. Luan Luan slowly opened her eyes. There weren't many changes. However, at this moment, in Luan Luan's small hand, a sparkling and translucent pill the size of a thumb had already formed. Naturally, this wasn't a normal pill. Luan Luan didn't know how to refine pills. This was just something that Luan Luan had condensed using the mysterious power in her body. It looked more like a pill. Luan Luan handed the pill in her hand to Shao Qin and said worriedly, "Daddy, is this really okay? You won't be in danger, right?" Luan Luan was very smart. She knew that what Shao Qin was about to do this time was very dangerous. Therefore, she couldn't help but be worried. Hearing this, Shao Qin took the pill in Luan Luan's hand and gently stroked the little girl's head. "Don't worry. Isn't this a treasure that Luan Luan gave me? Daddy will be fine." After saying that, Shao Qin began to look at the thing in his hand that looked like a pill. This was the key to whether or not Shao Qin could succeed this time. He couldn't guarantee that he would succeed. However, no matter what, Shao Qin had to give it his all. There was no turning back an arrow. Either he would succeed or both him and Hong Xiu would die. It was indeed a crazy decision, but Xiao Chen did not regret it. He carefully put the pill away. At that moment, a maid came in and said that Yi Xiao wanted to see him. Yi Xiao was there. It was obvious that Yi Xiao knew about Xiao Chen's situation and did not refuse. Xiao Chen saw Yi Xiao in the front hall, whose face was still very pale. However, this time, before Xiao Chen could say anything, Yi Xiao yelled, "Xiao Chen, are you crazy? You're gambling with your life." Yi Xiao shouted in a bad mood. Xiao Chen wasn't angry. He knew that Yi Xiao was worried about him. Xiao Chen took a sip of tea and said slowly, "Then what do you think we should do? Watch Hong Xiu die without doing anything?" Yi Xiao was stunned by Xiao Chen's words. Yes, what else could they do? The attitude of the realm lords was very clear. Even Hong Lian couldn't change anything, let alone Xiao Chen. What else could they do? Could they go against the realm lords head-on? That was even more impossible. Yi Xiao's face darkened. He sat down on the chair next to Xiao Chen and said helplessly, "Don't worry. But it's too dangerous for you to do this. If you fail, won't you and Hong Xiu both?" Yi Xiao wanted to say that both of them would die. But before he finished, Xiao Chen interrupted him. "Are you sure that I will lose before we even start?" Xiao Chen appeared to be very calm, but it was not as if he had already won. On the contrary, Xiao Chen was actually not confident at all. But what else could he do now that things had come to this? He could only give it his all. Man proposes, God disposes. He could only give it his all. As for the final result, it would be up to God. He hoped that the mysterious power in Luan Luan's body would be useful. Seeing that Xiao Chen had made up his mind and there was no room for regrets now, Yi Xiao took a deep breath and didn't say anything else. But Yi Xiao regretted asking Qiru to send a message to Xiao Chen and ask Xiao Chen to save Hong Xiu. If he didn't ask Qiru to send a message to Xiao Chen, none of this would have happened and Xiao Chen wouldn't have fallen into such a dangerous situation. Sensing the change in Yi Xiao, Xiao Chen said with a smile, "All right, it's already come to this. Don't overthink it. Besides, who says that I will definitely fail?" Since things had come to this, no matter how worried or conflicted he was, it was useless. Yi Xiao let out a sigh and nodded helplessly. Yi Xiao blamed himself. In his opinion, it was all because of him that Xiao Chen had fallen into such a difficult situation. He was the one who had harmed Xiao Chen. He swore in his heart that if anything happened to Xiao Chen, Yi Xiao wouldn't live alone. He would avenge Xiao Chen and kill Mu Fan. The two of them chatted for a while before Yi Xiao got up and left. Not long after Yi Xiao left, Wine Daoist and Li Qiu found Xiao Chen. They said the same thing as Yi Xiao. They also felt that Xiao Chen was too reckless and were worried about Xiao Chen. With regards to Wine Daoist's worries, Xiao Chen naturally opened his mouth to comfort him. After a night of silence, Xiao Chen was called to the Great Hall of the Seventh Realm by the Realm Lords early in the morning. When Xiao Chen arrived, Luoli, Mu Tai, Yi Xian, and the other 8 Realm Lords were already gathered together. Sitting at the top of the hall, Luoli looked at Xiao Chen and said indifferently, "Xiao Chen, are you ready?" "Yes." Hearing Luoli's words, Xiao Chen nodded in response. At this point, there was no point in delaying any further, so Xiao Chen simply nodded in response. Seeing this, Luoli said in a deep voice, "We have tried to refine the will of the heavenly way before, but because the power of the will of the heavenly way is not as gentle as spiritual energy, it is very destructive, and martial artists are unable to refine it. The most important reason is because the immortal palace and meridians in the body are unable to withstand the power of the will of the heavenly way and will be instantly destroyed. Therefore, if you want to refine the power of the will of the heavenly way, you first have to be able to withstand this power. Since you are ready, then let's go." He told Xiao Chen the things to pay attention to when refining the will of the heavenly way, but this kind of introduction was actually useless. After all, if your meridians and immortal palace couldn't withstand this power, even if you knew this, what use would it be? Sorry brothers, I'm late. This is the second update. Today's fourth update is the same. Please collect, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 1765. Therefore, even if he told Xiao Chen all this, it wouldn't be of much use. If he couldn't bear it, then he couldn't bear it. This was something that couldn't be helped. Even Mu Fan could only bear a little bit of power at a time. He couldn't bear any more. Without waiting for Xiao Chen's reply, Luo Li and the other sector lords immediately led Xiao Chen to the location of the first wilderness will of the Heavenly Way. The first wilderness will of the Heavenly Way had been sealed by the Hachibra Senkai a long time ago. The 8 peaks where the Hachibra Senkai was located were actually used to suppress the first wilderness will of the Heavenly Way. It was also because of this that the Hachibra Senkai set up their headquarters here. Under the 8 peaks there was a huge palace. This palace was the place where the first wilderness will of the Heavenly Way was sealed. Only the sector lords could open the entrance to enter this place. The dimly lit underground palace was densely covered with talismans. Along the way, Xiao Chen found that the number of talisman matrices in the underground palace was simply uncountable, and almost all of them had reached the immortal level. There were at least 10 immortal level arrays enveloping this underground palace. Following the sector lords, Xiao Chen went all the way to the deepest part of the underground palace. There were countless chains all around, and without exception, these chains were all tied to a ball of white light in the center. This ball of white light was the body of the first wilderness will of the Heavenly Way. Of course, its intelligence had been sealed by the sector lords. At this time, the first wilderness will of the Heavenly Way couldn't sense anything around it at all. After sealing the first wilderness will of the Heavenly Way's intelligence, the sector lords still couldn't completely destroy it after so many years. They had tried countless methods, but they all ended in failure. This place could be said to be the true forbidden area of the Hachibra Senkai. Other than the sector lords, no one else could enter at all. Xiao Chen's eyes flashed with surprise as he looked at the ball of light in front of him. Before he even got close, Xiao Chen could already feel the pure energy coming from the ball of light. This energy was so tempting to Xiao Chen, but at the same time, it made Xiao Chen instinctively feel danger. It was extreme danger. It was as if he would die if he touched it. Deep in his heart, a voice kept telling Xiao Chen to stay away from the ball of light. Luo Li turned his head and glanced at Xiao Chen and said, "This is the body of the first wilderness will of the Heavenly Way. Xiao Chen, have you made your decision? If you back out now, I won't hold you responsible for anything." As the heir of the 7th realm, Luo Li naturally didn't want anything to happen to Xiao Chen. Therefore, even now, Luo Li still wanted to give Xiao Chen a chance to back out. As for what the other sector lords said, Luo Li would deal with them. He wanted to give Xiao Chen another chance, but when he heard this, Xiao Chen shook his head and refused without hesitation. "No need. Thank you, sector lord." Xiao Chen wasn't someone who would hesitate. Since he had made his decision, Xiao Chen obviously wouldn't give up halfway. Although the ball of light gave Xiao Chen an extreme sense of danger, Xiao Chen was still willing to give it a try. Even if he failed in the end and paid the price with his life, he wouldn't hesitate. Xiao Chen saw how well Hong Xiu treated him. In order to save Hong Xiu, Xiao Chen was willing to gamble with his life. After hearing Xiao Chen's final answer, Luo Li sighed softly and didn't say anything else. Seeing this, Mu Tai took over the topic. "Xiao Chen, you can't be too hasty in refining the will of the Heavenly Way. We don't need you to refine much of it. You just need to have the ability to refine the will of the Heavenly Way. Therefore, you can't absorb too much energy each time. Otherwise, your body will explode and you will die." Mu Tai wouldn't deliberately target Xiao Chen because of the bet between Xiao Chen and Mu Fan. To put it bluntly, everything Mu Tai did was just to explore the illusory supreme realm. However, compared to the other sector lords, his method was a little more extreme. He told Xiao Chen the method to refine the will of the heavenly way. He couldn't be too hasty, and he couldn't be too greedy. He could only absorb a trace of energy each time. Otherwise, his body would explode and he would die. After hearing Mu Tai's words, Xiao Chen bowed and thanked him. Then, the other sector lords took the initiative to retreat to the side, leaving Xiao Chen alone. Since Xiao Chen had made his decision, the other sector lords naturally wouldn't stop him. As for the final result, it all depended on Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen slowly walked towards the ball of light. The more he walked, the stronger the fear in his heart became. There was no other way. The energy of the will of the heavenly way was indeed too huge for Xiao Chen. Even though the first desolation's consciousness of the will of the heavenly way had been sealed by the sector lords, Xiao Chen still felt a chill down his spine. He took out the elixir that Luan Luan gave him yesterday. This elixir was Xiao Chen's trump card, and it was also the key to success. Without letting the other sector lords see this elixir, Xiao Chen swallowed it while they weren't paying attention. This elixir was condensed from the mysterious energy in Luan Luan's body. In Xiao Chen's opinion, the mysterious energy in Luan Luan's body was very similar to the energy of the will of the heavenly way. The two could be said to be of the same origin. After swallowing the elixir, Xiao Chen could clearly feel a gentle energy quickly spreading through his body and quickly entering his 8 extraordinary meridians. His meridians and immortal palace were firmly protected by this energy. Feeling the changes in his body, Xiao Chen felt a little more confident. Since Luoli had said that the key to refining the will of the heavenly way was whether or not he could withstand the energy of the will of the heavenly way. Now that he had the protection of this mysterious energy, perhaps he could succeed. With a little more confidence in his heart, Xiao Chen finally arrived in front of the ball of light. Strands of white light surrounded Xiao Chen. These strands of white light were emitted from the ball of light. Xiao Chen stretched out his hand and gently touched one of the strands of white light. Naturally, he couldn't touch the ball of light itself, because that was purely courting death. Even with Luan Luan's energy protecting him, Xiao Chen wouldn't do such a stupid thing. What Xiao Chen was trying to refine was the white light emanating from the balls of light. Compared to the balls of light themselves, the energy of the white light was much weaker. Therefore, the chances of success were naturally higher if he were to absorb and refine it. Xiao Chen stretched out his hand and gently touched one of the strands of white light. The first thing he felt was his heart palpitating, and his back was instantly covered with cold sweat. Third update, please bookmark, please recommend. Chapter 1766. Xiao Chen felt as though he was struck by lightning when he came into contact with a trace of energy. He stood rooted to the ground and his face turned pale. At the same time, Xiao Chen didn't even need to refine anything. The wisp of white light flowed along Xiao Chen's palm and entered Xiao Chen's body as though it was attracted by something. Luoli and the others were shocked when they saw the wisp of white light entering Xiao Chen's body. This had never happened when Mu Fan was refining the path of light. The white light would never enter a cultivator's body on its own accord. Instead, it needed to be absorbed by the cultivator before it could be absorbed into the body and refined. What's going on? Ningsu stared at Xiao Chen and asked in a deep voice. Hearing this, no one answered him. They just looked at Xiao Chen quietly. Under everyone's gaze, Xiao Chen sat down on a side seat. His eyes were closed, and he seemed to have lost consciousness. However, there was a weak force around Xiao Chen that spread out in all directions. He's starting to refine. Xiao Chen sat down cross-legged. The sector lords could see that Xiao Chen was refining the wisp of white light. There's such a thing? Looking at Xiao Qin, the sector lords were full of doubts. They had personally tried to refine the energy of the will of the heavenly way, but they had never seen such a thing happen. Not only did the wisp of white light enter Xiao Qian's body on its own accord, but Xiao Qian also seemed to be refining the energy of the white light in an unconscious state. They couldn't understand what was going on, but after a while, Luoli spoke up. "Let's take a look first." Luoli couldn't figure out what was going on, but somehow, Luoli felt that Xiao Qian would succeed. Hearing Luoli's words, Mu Tai and the others nodded slightly. Then, they did not dare to disturb Xiao Qian. They stood not far away and quietly watched Xiao Qian's transformation. The sector lords thought that Xiao Qian was refining the energy of the will of the heavenly way unconsciously. However, only Xiao Qian knew that it wasn't that he was unconscious, but that his consciousness couldn't control his body at all. At this moment, Xiao Qian knew very well what he was doing. He also knew that he was refining the power of the will of the heavens. However, Xiao Qian was unable to control his own body at all. He could only watch from the sidelines like a bystander. He could clearly feel that in his body, Luan's mysterious power was constantly helping him refine the energy of the will of the heavenly way. At first, the palpitations and feelings of fear quickly disappeared with the help of Luan's mysterious power. At the same time, Xiao Qian didn't feel the slightest discomfort while refining the energy of the will of the heavenly way. His meridians and Immortal's palace didn't feel any pain either. Not only did Xiao Qian not feel any pain, but he also felt very comfortable. At the same time, as this wisp of energy of the will of the heavenly way was being refined by him, Xiao Qian could clearly feel that his cultivation was increasing rapidly. It was definitely a good thing. The energy of the will of the heavenly way was definitely a good thing for Xiao Qian. No, it should be said that it was definitely a good thing for any warrior. It was far better than any treasure in this world. Of course, in order to enjoy such a resource, one must first be able to withstand the violent energy. Even the realm lords couldn't do this. However, Xiao Qian didn't feel any discomfort at all. Instead, he felt extremely comfortable. He knew that all of this was thanks to Luan. Without the protection of Luan's mysterious power, Xiao Qian definitely wouldn't be able to withstand the violent energy of the will of the heavenly way. But now, with the protection of Luan's mysterious power, the violent energy of the will of the heavenly way was no threat to Xiao Qian at all. He was getting more and more curious about Luan's identity. Even the energy of the will of the heavenly way seemed to be suppressed by Luan. No, not suppressed, but tamed. That's right. In front of Luan's mysterious power, this wisp of white light was like a docile puppy. It didn't dare to be violent at all. Could it be that Luan's identity is above that of the will of the heavenly way? Xiao Qian couldn't help but guess secretly. However, this was just a guess. There was no evidence. Time passed slowly. After 3 days, Xiao Qian still didn't show any signs of abnormality. At the same time, the energy of the wisp of white light was constantly being refined by Xiao Qian. Moreover, Xiao Qian's cultivation had increased a lot compared to 3 days ago. His cultivation was rapidly increasing. Therefore, the world lords not far away were certain that Xiao Qian had been refining that wisp of white light for the past 3 days. To be able to refine the power of the will of the heavenly way so easily, as if there was no pain at all, was something that even Mu Fan couldn't do before, but Xiao Qian had actually done it. Moreover, the amount of will of the heavenly way that Xiao Qian had refined in these 3 days was far more than Mu Fan's. It was at least 10 times more than Mu Fan's. My God, is this kid going to defy the heavens? Refining the power of the will of the heavenly way is as simple as eating candy to him. Yi Xian said with a face full of surprise as he looked at Xiao Qian. The energy that Xiao Qian displayed made the world lords pleasantly surprised. If Xiao Qian really had the ability to refine the will of the heavenly way, Then wouldn't the world lords be able to use this opportunity to explore the supreme realm above the immortal Emperor realm? The light of hope became more and more dazzling. At this moment, what Mu Fan? What Hongxiu? They were all thrown to the back of their minds by the world lords. However, no one came to a conclusion so easily. Everything would have to wait until the end, when Shao Chun had completely refined this wisp of white light. Only then would they be able to come to a conclusion. It was still too early. The world lords had no intention of leaving at all. They all stared at Shao Chun, as if they were looking at the most precious thing in the world. While Shao Chun was refining the power of the will of the heavenly way, on the other side, in the second wasteland, which was far away from the first wasteland, which had completely turned into a land of death, two unfamiliar figures arrived on this day. Both of them were wearing large black cloaks. Even their faces were completely covered. These two figures entered the second desolation and felt that there wasn't the slightest bit of spiritual energy of heaven and earth. One of them opened his mouth and spoke. "Big brother, it seems like the rumors are true. The second wasteland has really been destroyed. There is no spiritual energy of heaven and earth at all. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 1767. As she spoke, the black-robed person removed the hood that covered her face. Then, a beautiful face emerged. She was Shao Chen's second sister, Long Qing. One of the black-robed people was Shao Chen's second sister, Long Qing. The other person was naturally Shao Chen's eldest brother, Xianyuan Ling. As expected, after Long Qing revealed her face, Xianyuan Ling removed his hood and scanned the second wilderness that had become a land of death. A wasteland has been destroyed just like that. The creatures that lived on it have also perished. After Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing left the seventh wasteland, they traveled all the way from the seventh wasteland to the second wasteland. They experienced many things, and the memories that had been tampered with by the seventh wasteland's will of the heavenly Tao were constantly loosening. The two of them would occasionally recall the past. The cracks in the memories that had been tampered with by the will of the heavenly way in the seventh wilderness grew bigger and bigger. The true memories that had been sealed in the depths of their hearts seemed to be breaking out of the ground. However, in their current state, the two of them felt confused about the two different memories in their minds. Sometimes, they couldn't even tell which one was real and which one was fake. Upon hearing Xianyuan Ling's words, Long Qing's expression was complicated. But slowly, Long Qing seemed to have thought of something, and a look of longing flashed in her eyes. "I heard that little brother also participated in the battle in the second wilderness. I wonder how he is now." When she mentioned Shao Chun again, Long Qing didn't feel much hatred from her words. On the contrary, she felt more confused and complicated. That's right. When Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing mentioned Shao Chun, their hatred had decreased a lot. This was because the real memories in their hearts were constantly recovering. However, before they completely recovered, the two of them were really confused about Shao Chun. Hearing this, Xianyuan Ling sighed and said, "Don't worry, it's not like you don't know third brother's ability. He's much stronger than the two of us." It was obvious that he did not want to talk about Shao Chun too much. The main reason was that Xianyuan Ling did not know how to treat Shao Chun. As soon as he finished speaking, the two of them boarded a spaceship not far away and headed towards the depths of the second wasteland. The second desolate was now a land of death. It could be said that not even a blade of grass grew here. Along the way, there were no signs of life at all. Occasionally, there would be some rocks streaking across the starry sky. These rocks were of different sizes. The bigger ones were as big as an island, while the smaller ones were only the size of gravel. These rocks were left behind after the various continents of the second desolate collapsed and shattered. The entire second desolate was filled with such rocks. Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing steered the spaceship and traveled through these rocks. Nobody knew how many days they spent traveling in the second desolate. On this day, Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing were just as usual. However, as the two of them were moving forward, two light gates suddenly appeared in front of them. Upon seeing the two light gates, Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing's expressions changed drastically. They had seen such light gates before in the seventh realm. Immortal crystal spirit vein. Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing exclaimed in unison. That's right. These two light gates were the immortal crystal spirit veins, or the entrances to the forces of living. And here, two forces of living appeared at once. The forces of living were extremely rare, and there were definitely not many of them. And now, two of them appeared before Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing at once. However, this wasn't surprising. After all, when the second desolate was destroyed, many living beings disappeared along with it. With so many lives gone, it wasn't surprising that two forces of living gathered. They stared blankly at the two light gates before them. Back in the seventh realm, Shao Chen condensed the heavenly immortal mansion and broke through the immortal realm because of the forces of living. And now, such a huge opportunity was placed before Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing. After exchanging glances, Xianyuan Ling took a deep breath and said, "Second sister, the immortal crystal spirit vein. Both of us are in luck today." Xianyuan Ling was well aware of what the celestial crystal spiritual vein represented. Long Qing nodded heavily when he heard Xianyuan Ling's words. Without much hesitation, the two of them passed through the light door and entered. Only a fool would give up such a huge opportunity. After the two of them entered the light gate one after another, the light gate dissipated. Just like Shao Chun back then, in the forces of living, the two of them learned about what happened to heaven and earth and all living beings. At the same time, with the help of the forces of living, Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing's memories, which were tampered with by the will of the heavenly way in the seventh desolate, were also completely shattered at this moment. The two half-real, half-fake memories that surrounded the two of them were also completely resolved at this moment. Under the shroud of the forces of living, Long Qing finally recalled everything that happened before. Two lines of tears unconsciously flowed down her cheeks as she kept muttering, "Little brother, after knowing everything that happened before and what she did to Shao Chen," Long Qing felt her heart ache. His parents and wife were killed. Although Long Qing still didn't know that the instigator of this matter was the will of the heavenly way in the seventh desolate, Long Qing, who had recovered her true memories, absolutely didn't believe that Shao Chen would do such a vicious thing to his parents and wife. Shao Chen loved Qin Shiru and the other two girls so much. He was so filial to Shao Qing and Bai Ruoet. How could he possibly do such a thing to them? It could be said that the deaths of Shao Qing and Qin Shiru had absolutely nothing to do with Shao Chen. Long Qing, who had recovered her memories, didn't doubt this at all. However, when Shao Chen was at his most painful moment, she actually did such a thing to Shao Chen. As Shao Chen's second sister, she actually chose not to believe him. One could imagine how Shao Chen must have felt at that time. Not only did he have to bear the pain of losing his parents and wife, but he also had to face the blame of his second sister and big brother. How desolate must Shao Chen have felt back then? At this thought, Long Qing couldn't help but feel pain in her heart. Shao Chen shouldered everything alone. She, who should have stood firmly by Shao Chen's side, said that she would kill Shao Chen to avenge Shao Qing and the others. Long Qing couldn't stop her tears from flowing. She kept muttering Shao Chen's name. On the other side, Xianyuan Ling's situation wasn't much different from Long Qing's. He also knew what he had done previously. A deep sense of self-blame flashed in his eyes. He felt endless regret for what he had done in the past. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1768. Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing had obtained such a great opportunity in the second wilderness, which had become a land of death. Xiao Chen, who was in the first wilderness, naturally didn't know about this. After several days of refining, Xiao Chen had almost completely refined the energy in the wisp of white light. Moreover, after refining the energy, Xiao Chen's cultivation had reached the limit of the profound immortal realm. He had already touched the threshold of the lesser perfection immortal realm. At the same time, he couldn't control his body. At this moment, with the help of Luan's mysterious power and the white light, Xiao Chen actually began to break through the barrier of the lesser perfection immortal realm. Sensing the changes in Xiao Chen, the eyes of Luoli and the other realm lords who had been guarding here all lit up. Especially Mu Tai, he couldn't help but exclaim, "This kid is actually going to break through." After so many days, the realm lords were certain that Xiao Chen was able to refine the will of the heavenly way. Otherwise, how could Xiao Chen's cultivation improve so quickly? Moreover, everyone saw the wisp of white light entering Xiao Chen's body clearly. Another person could refine the will of the heavenly way. At this moment, all the realm lords were extremely excited. However, compared to the others, Hong Lian was also grateful to Xiao Chen. This was because if it wasn't for Xiao Chen, Hong Xiu's fate could be imagined. Now that Xiao Chen had also displayed the ability to refine the will of the heavenly way, according to the previous agreement, Mu Fan couldn't harass Hong Xiu from now on. Seeing that her daughter didn't have to die, Hong Lian, as a mother, was naturally overjoyed. And all of this was thanks to Xiao Chen. He kept trying to break through to the lesser perfection of the immortal realm. Another 2 days passed. On this day, the aura around Xiao Chen began to surge violently. Sensing this, all the realm lords also understood that this was a sign that he was about to break through. He's about to break through. The sixth realm master, Zuoting, looked at Xiao Chen and said excitedly. Xiao Chen's cultivation had broken through to the small completion of the celestial realm from the great completion of the celestial realm just by refining a sliver of the white light. This undoubtedly showed how powerful the will of the heavenly path was. The will of the heavenly path was born from heaven and earth, and the power of the will of the heavenly path was the purest in this world. As soon as Zuoting finished speaking, a strand of energy surged out, and Xiao Chen's cultivation had successfully broken through from the perfection of the immortal realm to the perfection of the immortal realm. However, Xiao Chen didn't feel too excited about the breakthrough. It couldn't be helped because from the beginning, Xiao Chen wasn't willing to refine the white light. It could be said that he was completely passive. While Xiao Chen was still conscious and aware of everything that had happened during this period, he was unable to control anything. It was all because of the mysterious power of the Luan that was helping him to refine the white light. Xiao Chen himself, on the other hand, was watching from the sidelines like a spectator. It was precisely because this breakthrough didn't have much to do with him that Xiao Chen didn't feel anything special after the breakthrough. But he had to admit that this breakthrough was the easiest one for Xiao Chen since he started cultivating. He didn't need to do anything at all and his cultivation had broken through directly. Xiao Chen's breakthrough made the realm lords overjoyed, especially Luoli and Hong Lian, who couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. While Xiao Chen was successfully breaking through, in the first realm, in Mu Fan's cave abode, several young geniuses from the first realm were sitting respectfully below Mu Fan. Mu Fan, who was sitting on the main seat, didn't seem to be happy or sad. However, his face, which already gave off a gloomy feeling, became even gloomier. Is there still no news from Xiao Chen's side? Mu Fan glanced at everyone and said plainly. So many days had passed, but there was still no news from Xiao Chen. Moreover, ever since they followed Xiao Chen into the underground palace where the will of the heavenly way was sealed, the realm lords still hadn't left. Mu Fan had a bad feeling about this. As Mu Fan, he naturally didn't want Xiao Chen to succeed. After all, once Xiao Chen succeeded, the realm lords' attitudes would definitely change. By then, Mu Fan wouldn't be able to attack Hong Xiu anymore. Moreover, he wouldn't be able to enjoy the same treatment as before in Hachibra Senkai. After all, there were two people who could devour and refine the will of the heavenly way. In this way, Mu Fan would no longer be irreplaceable. By then, even if they lost him, the Realm Lords could still choose Shao Chun. Hearing Mu Fan's words, the First Realm's geniuses looked at each other. Finally, one of them stood up and said respectfully to Mu Fan, "Senior, not yet. Ever since Shao Chun entered the underground palace, there hasn't been any news. The Realm Lords don't seem to have left either." There was no news at all. Hearing this, Mu Fan's face darkened again. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly saw a weak fluctuation of cultivation coming from underground. This was obviously the aura of someone who had broken through. It was a breakthrough in the immortal state. However, compared to the ordinary immortal state masters, this person's strength was obviously much stronger. He didn't know who had broken through, but the first thing that came to Mu Fan's mind was Shao Chun. Could it be that Shao Chun had broken through? At this thought, Mu Fan's eyes became even colder. Now, Shao Chun was trying to refine the power of the will of the heavenly way. If Shao Chun had really broken through, didn't that mean that Shao Chun also had the ability to refine the will of the heavenly way? His eyes were cold as he thought to himself, "Shao Chun, you're courting death." In Mu Fan's opinion, Shao Chun had spoiled his plans. If Shao Chun hadn't been around, Mu Fan would have started to devour Hong Xiu's bloodline power. As long as Hong Xiu's bloodline power was integrated, Mu Fan would definitely be able to reach a higher level. At that time, Mu Fan would undoubtedly be the first heir of the Hachibra Senkai. However, because of Shao Chun's appearance, all of this seemed to be going up in smoke. According to the agreement, if Shao Chun succeeded, Mu Fan would no longer be able to harass Hong Xiu, let alone have any ideas about her. Only by devouring Hong Xiu's bloodline power would he be truly complete. This had always been Mu Fan's thought since he was young. Now, this thought and this wish were about to slip away before his eyes. One could imagine how Mu Fan would feel. Mu Fan's eyes narrowed slightly, and endless murderous intent rose from his body. Feeling the extreme murderous intent from Mu Fan's body, the few geniuses from the First Realm couldn't help but feel a chill run down their spines. They subconsciously took a few steps back and distanced themselves from Mu Fan. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1769. His murderous intent was overflowing, but Mu Fan was powerless to change anything. All the sector lords were guarding Shao Chun, so Mu Fan couldn't do anything. He could only watch from the side. Furthermore, judging from the current situation, Shao Chun had probably succeeded. Just as Mu Fan was overflowing with murderous intent, in the underground palace, Shao Chun's cultivation had successfully broken through to the lesser perfection immortal realm. At the same time, the white light in Shao Chun's body and the mysterious power of Luan Luan disappeared at the same time. Shao Chun slowly opened his eyes and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. The power of the will of the heavenly way was indeed incomparably pure, but Shao Chun didn't intend to continue absorbing it. Firstly, Shao Chun had already proven himself and achieved his goal. Secondly, the mysterious power of Luan Luan in his body had also disappeared. Without the protection of Luan Luan's mysterious power, Shao Chun didn't think that he had the ability to refine the power of the will of the heavenly way. Luan Luan's help was definitely the main reason for his success this time. It was also because of Luan Luan's help that Shao Chun was able to succeed. He stood up and stretched his body. Seeing this, Luo Li and the other sector lords quickly walked over. Their gazes fell on Shao Chun, and their expressions were incomparably complicated. Shao Chun had really succeeded. Furthermore, in terms of the speed and quantity of refining the will of the heavenly way, Shao Chun was obviously far superior to Mu Fan. Seeing such a result, Everyone was gratified and excited. Now that there were two people from Hachibara Senkai who could refine the will of the heavenly way, didn't that mean that their vows and guesses were very likely to be realized? Facing everyone's gazes, Xiao Chen's expression didn't change. He cupped his hands and bowed to the sector lords. Then, Luo Li smiled and spoke first. This is Hachibara Senkai's fortune. After hearing Luo Li's words, everyone nodded in agreement. Indeed, Xiao Chen was able to refine the will of the heavenly way, and in terms of speed and quantity, he was far superior to Mu Fan. This was indeed Hachibara Senkai's fortune. After praising Xiao Chen with satisfaction, Xiao Chen spoke. Sector lords, since I've succeeded, then what about the previous matter, the previous agreement? After hearing Xiao Chen's words, everyone shifted their gaze to Mu Tai. In response, Mu Tai nodded without much hesitation. Don't worry. Since you've succeeded, we won't go back on our words. You can head to the first realm to pick up Hongxiu at any time. Besides, from now on, we won't make things difficult for her anymore. As a sector lord and an existence in the immortal emperor realm, Mu Tai naturally wouldn't go back on his word. Since he had promised Xiao Chen, he definitely had to fulfill his promise. With Mu Tai's approval, Xiao Chen bowed once again and thanked him. Then, accompanied by the sector lords, Xiao Chen left the underground palace and rushed to the first realm immediately. At this moment, only the sector lords knew that Xiao Chen had successfully refined the will of the heavenly way. In the 7th and 8th realms, Wine Taoist, Yi Xiao, and some others who were close to Xiao Chen had been on tenterhook. In Li Qiu's cave dwelling in the 7th realm, Wine Taoist and Li Qiu were drinking wine and chatting casually. But from beginning to end, Wine Taoist was absent-minded. Knowing that Wine Taoist was worried about Xiao Chen, Li Qiu couldn't do anything about it and could only console him. Old drunkard, Xiao Chen isn't a reckless person. Since he dared to make this decision, he must have something to rely on. Of course, I know that. But refining the will of the heavenly way is easier said than done, Wine Taoist replied softly. Refining the will of the heavenly way was indeed not an easy task. Otherwise, Mu Fan wouldn't have been the only one who had succeeded after so many years. Moreover, Xiao Chen had put his life on the line this time. How could Wine Taoist not be worried? It had been almost 10 days since Xiao Chen entered the underground palace, and there had been no news. Wine Taoist was still uncertain. Seeing that Wine Taoist was still worried, Li Qiu could only sigh helplessly and didn't say anything else. This matter was beyond Li Qiu and Wine Taoist's abilities. The final outcome would depend on Xiao Chen. Even if the two of them wanted to help, they had no way of doing so. The two of them were still worried about Xiao Chen. However, at this moment, Xiao Chen had already arrived at the first realm with the company of the various realm lords. Xiao Chen arrived outside Mu Fan's cave. Under the company of Mu Tai and the other realm lords, Xiao Chen directly entered Mu Fan's cave. Then, he saw Hongxiu in a courtyard. As usual, Hongxiu was sitting alone in the courtyard in a daze. She was only worried about Xiao Chen. As for her own outcome, Hongxiu didn't care anymore. Her heart was dead. However, at this moment, the courtyard door was pushed open and Xiao Chen strode in. When she first saw Xiao Chen, Hongxiu was still in a daze. Her beautiful eyes stared blankly at Xiao Chen, as if she couldn't believe that Xiao Chen would appear here. She was in a daze and her eyes unknowingly turned red. Upon seeing this, Xiao Chen revealed a faint smile and said, "Why? Don't you want to go back?" Only after hearing Xiao Chen's joke did Hongxiu come back to her senses. Without any hesitation, she rushed into Xiao Chen's arms. She could no longer hold back her tears as she spoke with a tear-stained face. You succeeded?" Hongxiu knew that in order to save her, Xiao Chen willingly tried to refine the will of the heavenly way. Now that Xiao Chen appeared before her, Hongxiu couldn't help but make this guess. Upon hearing her words, Xiao Chen patted her back gently and said gently, "If I didn't succeed, you would still be able to see me. Silly girl, stop crying. Let's go back." Xiao Chen really doted on Hong Xiu. Under Xiao Chen's comforting words, Hong Xiu's tears turned into smiles. Since Xiao Chen succeeded in the end, she didn't have to worry about Mu Fan anymore. After all, the attitude of the Realm Lords had probably changed. There were still traces of tears in the corners of her eyes, but when she looked at Xiao Chen, she smiled coquettishly and said, "You're so annoying. You made me worry for so long. I don't care. This time, when we go back, we have to throw a banquet." Looking at Hong Xiu's beautiful face, Xiao Chen smiled and nodded. "Okay, we'll do as you say." Previously, Xiao Chen didn't know how to treat Hong Xiu. But after this incident, he realized that he really couldn't ignore Hong Xiu's existence. Just like when he heard that Hong Xiu was in trouble, Xiao Chen's first reaction was to rush back to the immortal world without stopping. Unknowingly, this little girl had actually walked into his heart. During his most difficult times, this little girl had always been by his side and made his originally ice-cold heart feel a trace of warmth. Looking for collection, looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Chapter 1770. Because of the incident with Qin Shuru and the other two girls, Xiao Chen still didn't know if he should accept Hong Xiu. There was still a knot in his heart. However, after this incident, Xiao Chen no longer denied that Hong Xiu had already entered his heart. As for what would happen in the future, Xiao Chen didn't intend to think too much about it. Let nature take its course. He patted Hong Xiu's head lightly. Xiao Chen had never done such an intimate action before. Hong Xiu instantly blushed and rolled her eyes shyly at Xiao Chen. However, she was extremely happy in her heart. She felt that she had profited from a disaster. Because of her encounter this time, Xiao Chen's attitude towards her had changed. Hong Xiu was absolutely happy to see this change. After comforting Hong Xiu softly, the two of them prepared to leave. This time, no one dared to stop Xiao Chen and Hong Xiu. After all, Xiao Chen came to pick Hong Xiu up. This was something that all the Realm Lords had agreed to. Even if Mu Fan didn't agree, it would be useless. They left Mu Fan's cave without any obstructions. All the Realm Lords had already left, including Hong Lian. They probably went to discuss some matters. After all, Xiao Chen had displayed the ability to refine the will of the heavenly way. Some of the previous plans had to be adjusted. Of course, the Realm Lords didn't know that the reason why Xiao Chen was able to refine the will of the heavenly way wasn't because of himself. It was because of Luan Luan. However, Xiao Chen didn't intend to tell the Realm Lords this secret. After all, Xiao Chen was worried that if they knew the truth, the Realm Lords might use Luan Luan as an experiment. Therefore, it was better to keep this secret for the time being. As soon as they left Mu Fan's cave dwelling, Mu Fan was already waiting for them outside. When Hong Xiu saw Mu Fan, fear instinctively flashed in her eyes. However, Mu Fan approached Hong Xiu with an ice-cold expression and said coldly, "What are you waiting for? Do you think this is the end? Hong Xiu, I've said that you can't run away. You can't run away from me in this lifetime. You are mine. Nothing can change that." Mu Fan still didn't give up. When Hong Xiu heard his words, she bit her lips tightly and didn't say anything. However, at this moment, a pair of strong hands grabbed Hong Xiu's arm. Xiao Chen pulled Hong Xiu behind him and faced Mu Fan. "Move." Now that Mu Fan no longer had anyone to rely on and the Realm Lords no longer supported him unconditionally, Hong Xiu finally felt safe with Xiao Chen protecting her. With Xiao Chen around, Hong Xiu didn't feel that scary anymore even when facing Mu Fan. When Mu Fan heard Xiao Chen's words, a trace of killing intent flashed across his eyes. From Mu Fan's point of view, it was all because of Xiao Chen. It was all because of him that his plan had been ruined. If it wasn't for Xiao Chen, Hong Xiu would probably have been devoured by him. Therefore, Mu Fan's killing intent towards Xiao Chen was extremely strong. Mu Fan stared at Xiao Chen and said word by word, "Xiao Chen, don't be too happy. One day, I will let you know what regret is. I'll wait for you." Hearing Mu Fan's threat, Xiao Chen replied fearlessly. Without waiting for Mu Fan's reply, Xiao Chen pulled Hongxiu and left. As Mu Fan watched the two of them leave, the killing intent in his eyes continued to gather. The strong killing intent seemed to turn into two sharp knives that would stab Xiao Chen to death. However, a gaze couldn't kill after all. Even though Mu Fan's killing intent was very strong, he had no choice but to watch Xiao Chen leave with Hongxiu. He brought Hongxiu all the way back to the 7th realm. After leaving the 1st realm, Hongxiu heaved a sigh of relief. Then, Hongxiu saw Luan Luan in the cave. The little girl had missed Hongxiu a lot. After seeing Hongxiu, Luan Luan immediately rushed into Hongxiu's arms and said sweetly, "Aunt Hong, Luan Luan misses you. Why didn't you come to see Luan Luan? Why are you calling me Aunt Hong? How many times have I told you? You should call me mother." Hearing Luan Luan's words, Hongxiu deliberately said with a straight face. Hearing Hongxiu's words, Xiao Chen couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. He turned to look at Hongxiu, but Hongxiu made a face at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen couldn't help but sigh helplessly. "Luan Luan is still young. Don't teach her nonsense." "How is this nonsense? I am Luan Luan's mother. Is there a problem?" Hongxiu retorted. In the face of Hongxiu's fallacious reasoning, Xiao Chen couldn't be bothered to argue with her. He turned around and walked away. Hongxiu didn't mind. After this incident, Hongxiu was even more determined to be with Xiao Chen. No matter what happened, Hongxiu swore to herself that she would stick to Xiao Chen for the rest of her life. Even if the world fell apart, she wouldn't leave Xiao Chen. Hongxiu found it funny when she thought about how she had deliberately left Xiao Chen because she was afraid that Xiao Chen would be hurt by Mu Fan. Xiao Chen was the man she liked. Naturally, he had the ability to protect her. With Xiao Chen around, why should she be afraid of Mu Fan? She was really stupid back then. However, she wouldn't do that again. No matter what happened, Hongxiu would never leave Xiao Chen again. Holding Luan Luan in her arms, Hongxiu continued to brainwash her. "Luan Luan, you can't call me Aunt Hong anymore. You have to call me mother, okay?" After returning to the 7th realm, Hongxiu quickly recovered. She moved in with Xiao Chen again without hesitation. Xiao Chen was helpless about this, but he didn't stop her. On the other hand, Luan Luan was overjoyed to see Hongxiu back. Xiao Chen didn't have much time to spend with Luan Luan. Hongxiu had been in charge of taking care of her, so Luan Luan was very dependent on Hongxiu. Xiao Chen went back to his room to wash up and change into a clean set of clothes. When he returned to the courtyard again, he saw that Yi Xiao had also arrived. He was chatting with Hongxiu in the courtyard. From afar, he could hear that Yi Xiao was bragging again. He bragged to Hongxiu, "Junior sister, you have to believe me. After you were captured, I couldn't control the anger in my heart. I ignored my injuries and went to fight with Mu Fan for 300 rounds. If I wasn't injured, I would have cut off Mu Fan's head with my own hand." Hearing Yi Xiao's words from afar, Xiao Chen's mouth twitched unconsciously. Today, he finally saw it for himself. What did it mean by bragging without a draft? Fighting with Mu Fan for 300 rounds? If Xiao Chen remembered correctly, Mu Fan probably couldn't even mobilize his spiritual power a few days ago. How could he fight with Mu Fan for 300 rounds? It was more like he was going to throw his head away. Please add it to your collection. Monthly vote recommend it. Chapter 1771. Yi Zhao's face didn't turn red at all. Looking at Yi Zhao's appearance, those who weren't familiar with him would probably think that he and Mu Fan had fought for 300 rounds without a victor being decided. However, as someone who had grown up with Mu Fan, after hearing his words, Hongxiu replied with a look of disdain. Only a fool would believe you. Hongxiu saw Xiao Chen, who had finished washing up, and immediately rushed into Xiao Chen's embrace. Xiao Chen felt rather helpless about this. In the past, Hongxiu loved to stick to him. This time, after he rescued her, not only did the situation not change, but she became even more rampant. Yes, that's right, rampant. Just like Luan Luan, Hongxiu also acted as though she wanted to cling to him. Yi Xiao felt helpless in his heart. Seeing Hongxiu's actions, Yi Xiao could only tease with some jealousy, "You're really a grown woman. You haven't even gotten married yet." Sigh, public morals are degenerating with each passing day. Hearing Yi Xiao's words, Hongxiu's face turned red. She immediately quarreled with Yi Xiao. Of course, their quarrel was more of a joke. Ever since they were young, Hong Lian and Yi Xiao were undoubtedly the ones who treated Hongxiu the best. Both of them sincerely thought for Hongxiu, and this time, when facing Mu Fan, only Yi Xiao and Hong Lian could stand up for Hongxiu. After a round of argument, Yi Xiao was the first to admit defeat. The three of them went to the pavilion in the courtyard and sat down. Luan Luan insisted on being hugged by Xiao Chen. Looking at Xiao Chen, Yi Xiao withdrew the smile on his face and said seriously to Xiao Chen, "Brother Xiao Chen, thank you so much for this matter. In the future, if there's any," after knowing Yi Xiao for so long, this was the first time he saw Yi Xiao so serious. He knew what Yi Xiao was thinking, but before Yi Xiao could finish his sentence, Xiao Chen interrupted him. "Why are you thanking me? Even if you didn't say it, I couldn't just stand by and do nothing." "That's right. Anyway, I've already decided to devote my life to Xiao Chen." Xiao Chen had just finished his sentence when Hongxiu chimed in. Hearing this, Xiao Chen was speechless. Yi Xiao didn't say anything and just smiled. No one knew what he was thinking. In fact, Yi Xiao's thoughts were very simple. Right now, Yi Xiao didn't object to Hongxiu and Xiao Chen being together at all because of Xiao Chen's character. This time, Xiao Chen could have just stood by and watched, but Xiao Chen didn't. Besides, if it weren't for Xiao Chen, Hongxiu wouldn't have been saved. Thinking about it, in order to save Hongxiu, Xiao Chen directly gambled his life. If Xiao Chen failed to refine the will of the heavenly way, perhaps Xiao Chen and Hongxiu would both perish. For the sake of Hongxiu, he didn't hesitate to gamble his life. Wasn't such a person worth entrusting? Therefore, Yi Xiao also thought it through. He even felt that it was Hongxiu's fortune to have met Xiao Chen. Although Xiao Chen already had more than one wife, so what? In the Ba Huang world, it was normal for experts to have several wives. Some people even had an uncountable number of female confidants. Hongxiu was in a good mood now that the danger was averted and she could continue to accompany Xiao Chen. The three of them sat together and Hongxiu kept saying that she wanted to hold a banquet and that they wouldn't go home until they were drunk. Yi Xiao didn't object to this, and neither did Xiao Chen. Seeing this, Hongxiu happily brought Luan Luan to prepare the banquet. It had to be said that Hongxiu was a silly girl. It was her nature to like crowds. She had been like this since she was young. When she was happy, she would hold a banquet. When she was unhappy, she would also hold a banquet. In any case, she just liked to have more people and liveliness. In the face of Hongxiu's excitement, Xiao Chen and Yi Xiao just let her be. In any case, with their status, holding a banquet was just a matter of saying a word. Furthermore, Hongxiu knew the importance of holding a banquet. The people she invited were all close friends of the three of them. Hongxiu wouldn't randomly invite unimportant people. As such, instead of calling it a banquet, it was better to call it a gathering for everyone to sit together and have a chat. That night, the wine Taoist, Li Qiu, and even Luo Li and Hong Lian, who were close to Xiao Chen and Hongxiu, gathered in Xiao Chen's cave residence and drank happily. And as expected, Yi Xiao got drunk again. After a silent night, Xiao Chen's life returned to normal in the following days. However, unlike before, Xiao Chen was always surrounded by two women, one older and one younger. The older one was naturally Hongxiu, and the younger one was Luan Luan. The two women liked to stick to Xiao Chen, but they were also very sensible. When Xiao Chen was cultivating, they never disturbed Xiao Chen. As for the matters of the seventh realm, Xiao Chen never cared about it and left everything to Yu Shujin. With the help of the small perfection of the immortal realm, when he swallowed the will of the heavenly way, Xiao Chen completely stabilized his cultivation after half a month. Moreover, Xiao Chen had also cultivated the netherworld sword technique and the heavenly star step to the perfection of immortal realm. He had also cultivated the netherworld sword technique and the heavenly star step for a long time. Now that he had finally reached the perfection of immortal realm, their power naturally increased a lot. Xiao Chen didn't hear about the outside world and cultivated diligently every day. In his free time, he accompanied Luan and Hongxiu. His life was very comfortable. Moreover, Qin Shuru and the others' conditions were getting better and better under Hongxiu's care. It could be said that Xiao Chen's life was quite satisfactory. The only knot in his heart was Qin Shuru and the others, but this matter couldn't be rushed. However, while Xiao Chen was cultivating alone, on this day, in a city called Seven Star City on the Immortal Realm continent, several geniuses of the Seventh Realm were surrounded by hundreds of people led by two young geniuses of the First Realm. The people of the Hachibara Senkai realms were rarely anxious. Moreover, the people of each realm would only listen to the orders of the realm master or the heir of each realm. They were more respectful to the realm masters of other realms, but they wouldn't listen to their orders. At this time, the geniuses of the two realms met in Seven Star City. The two geniuses of the first realm took the lead and directly surrounded the geniuses of the seventh realm. In response, the leading genius of the seventh realm said with a gloomy face, "Tianhong, what do you mean?" Obviously, they knew each other. Hearing this, the genius of the first realm called Tianhong sneered and said, "What do I mean? Wang Qi, what do you think I mean?" A trace of mockery flashed in his eyes. Before Wang Qi could reply, Tianhong snorted and said, "Beat them up. Just leave them with one breath." Hearing this, the hundreds of people beside him immediately chose to attack. They all attacked Wang Qi and the other geniuses of the seventh realm. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 1772. More than 100 people attacked at the same time, including two geniuses from the first realm. The result was obvious. Wang Qi and the other geniuses from the seventh realm were all beaten up. Wang Qi's right arm was even cut off by Tianhong's sword. The reason why Tianhong and the others were looking for trouble with Wang Qi and the other geniuses was because of Mu Fan's order. He hated Xiao Chen, but he couldn't do anything to Xiao Chen. Therefore, Mu Fan could only vent his anger on the geniuses from the seventh realm. "Aren't you geniuses from the seventh realm? Isn't Xiao Chen your heir of Kunlun's field? Well, since I can't do anything to Xiao Chen, I'll use you guys to vent my anger." This was Mu Fan's idea. As for the warriors behind Tianhong, they were from a sect in the immortal realm called the Heming sect. It was a great sage sect attached to the first realm. It was very powerful, even more powerful than the Taibai sect in the seven-realm continent. It was said that there were as many as 40 the great sage in the sect. A sect with 40 the great sage was indeed very powerful. Of course, it was still not enough in front of the Hachibara Senkai. It could be said that they were loyal dogs of the first realm. Therefore, in the face of Tianhong's order, the warriors of the Heming sect did not hesitate to carry it out, even if the other party was a genius from the seventh realm. In the Heming sect's opinion, even if something happened, the first realm would take care of it. Of course, in the immortal realm continent, it was not only the first realm that had such a sect but also the other realms. For example, in the seventh realm, where Xiao Chen was from, there were 3 sects that were as powerful as the Heming sect. This was only in the immortal realm continent, not including the seven-realm continent. Although each realm had its own subordinate forces, there had never been any conflict. However, this time, Mu Fan took the initiative to attack the seventh realm, which undoubtedly set a precedent. He did not show any mercy. 3 days later, Yu Shujin led more than a dozen geniuses from the seventh realm to Seven-Star City. Before they entered the city, Yu Shujin and the other geniuses from the seventh realm turned gloomy when they arrived outside Seven-Star City. Their eyes were filled with rage. At a glance, they saw Wang Qi and the other 3 geniuses from the seventh realm hanging naked on the city wall of Seven-Star City. Many warriors who came and went in and out of the city all looked at the 4 geniuses from the seventh realm. This was a humiliation, naked. No wonder Yu Shujin and the other geniuses from the seventh realm. Senior brother, the people from the first realm have gone too far. One of them looked at Yu Shujin and said coldly. It was one thing for Wang Qi and the others to beat them up, but to do such a thing after the fact, it would mean that they were not giving the seventh realm any face at all. After all, Wang Qi and the others represented the seventh realm. Of the seventh realm, Yu Shujin's ofs, but seventh realm 7 people from the immortal seven realm S. In S the people from the first realm had indeed gone too far, but Yu Shujin could not make the decision. She had to report this matter to Xiao Chen and let Xiao Chen make the decision. The group of people put Wang Qi and the other 3 geniuses down, then entered Seven-Star City and settled down in the mansion of the seventh realm. As a big city in the immortal realm continent, Seven-Star City naturally had the property of the seventh realm. When Yu Shujin and the others had just settled down, the city lord of Seven-Star City personally came to visit. The city lord mansion of Seven-Star City was appointed by the Hachibara Senkai. The city lord was also an expert of the great sage Great Perfection realm. At this time, the city lord came to visit in person. Yu Shujin just sneered and said, "Oh, now you want to visit? What about before? Are you blind?" Yu Shujin was naturally unhappy with the city lord of Seven-Star City. Wang Qi and the others had been hanging on the city wall for at least 3 days. For 3 days, the city lord of Seven-Star City did not do anything and let Wang Qi and the other 3 geniuses hang there. Now that Yu Shujin and the others had arrived, he immediately came to visit. What was the meaning of this? It could be guessed that the city lord of Seven-Star City was afraid of the first realm, but then again, was the seventh realm easy to bully? As the city lord, he could ignore Wang Qi and the other 3 geniuses hanging on the city wall because of the first realm. In Yu Shujin's view, this was not putting the seventh realm in his eyes. Yu Shujin sneered and said faintly, "Let him in." In the main hall, Yu Shujin sat on the main seat. Soon, an ordinary-looking middle-aged man strode in. This person was the city lord of Seven-Star City, Shiju. Entering the hall, Shiju respectfully bowed to Yu Shujin. Seeing this, Yu Shujin sneered. "Heh, I thought that city lord sure wasn't in Seven-Star City. So it turns out that you're here." Hearing Yu Shujin's words, a cold light flashed in Shiju's eyes. However, on the surface, he still said respectfully, "My lord, you must be joking. This lowly one has been in Seven-Star City all this time. I dare not leave my post without permission." "Oh, so City Lord sure knows about Wang Qi and the other 3 geniuses? Since you know, why did you let Wang Qi and the other 3 geniuses hang on the city wall?" Yu Shujin said. Facing Yu Shujin's question, Shiju had already thought of an excuse. His expression did not change as he said, "My lord, this lowly one was indeed in a difficult position. The one who injured Lord Wang Qi and the others was Lord Tianhong from the first realm. This lowly one did not dare to offend him." Shiju did not dare to offend him? Actually, this was just a formality. When Tianhong hung Wang Qi and the others up on the city walls, he had already informed Shiju not to interfere in this matter and not to make the decision to release Wang Qi and the others on his own accord. As for the seventh realm, if anything happened, only the first realm would take care of it. It had nothing to do with Shiju. It could be said that Shi Ju did not care about Wang Qi and the others because he had already sided with the first realm. Perhaps in his opinion, the first realm was more terrifying. If he sided with the first realm, he would naturally offend the seventh realm. This was without a doubt. Shi Ju had already thought about this, which was why he said this. Hearing Shi Ju's explanation, Yu Shujin couldn't help but feel a trace of anger in his heart. He said coldly, "Good, what a good, don't dare to offend. In that case, you dare to offend my seventh realm? My lord, you misunderstand. This lowly one absolutely did not mean that. However, as the saying goes, when two sides are mutually harmful, one chooses the lesser. This lowly one has no choice." Since things had developed to this point, Shi Ju could only stand firmly on the first realm's side. Therefore, at this moment, Shi Ju straightened his body and looked straight into Yu Shujin's eyes. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1773. Shi Ju had no other choice. Given the current situation, he could only choose to go all the way. Since he had already chosen to stand on the side of the first realm, this was the only way. Perhaps because he had already weighed the pros and cons in his heart, Shi Ju was no longer as respectful as before when facing Yu Shujin. On the contrary, he seemed to be full of confidence. The first realm and the seventh realm's strength were similar, so it was hard to say who was stronger. However, the real reason why Shi Ju chose to side with the first realm was because of Mu Fan. First of all, Mu Fan had been cultivating in the first realm all year round. Compared to the heirs of the other realms, Shi Ju obviously had a deeper understanding of Mu Fan. It was also because of this understanding that Shi Ju knew that Mu Fan was a madman who would do anything to achieve his goals. Compared to the other heirs, Shi Ju's fear of Mu Fan was much stronger. Therefore, Shi Ju chose to side with the first realm. Perhaps in his opinion, although the seventh realm's strength was not weaker than the first realm's, based purely on the heirs of the two realms, it was obvious that Mu Fan was more dangerous. However, was this really the case? If Mu Fan was a madman, then what about Xiao Chen? Perhaps he was not much better than Mu Fan. In Shi Ju's opinion, if he offended the seventh realm, he would at most be punished. However, if he offended the first realm, based on Mu Fan's character, he would not be far from death. After all, Mu Fan did not care about any rules. Mu Fan was the key reason why Shi Ju chose to side with him. Unfortunately, Shi Ju's decision was too hasty. This was because he only knew Mu Fan and did not know Xiao Chen. He only thought that Xiao Chen should be the same as the heirs of the other realms, someone who cared about the rules. Looking at the confident Shi Ju, Yu Shujin guessed some of his thoughts. However, she still said calmly, "Then there is no need to say anything else. If that's the case, then there's no need to say more. I'll tell you the truth. Let's wait until the heirs of the seventh realm come." As she spoke, Yu Shujin waved her hand, indicating that Shi Ju could leave. Seeing this, Shi Ju did not stay for long. She gave a perfunctory bow and left the hall. Looking at Shi Ju's departing figure, Yu Shujin, who was sitting on the main seat, revealed a strange smile and said, "Offending Mu Fan is probably better than offending Senior Xiao Chen. Shi Ju, you've really drawn the worst lot." Others might not understand Xiao Chen, but Yu Shujin did. In Yu Shujin's opinion, she would rather offend Mu Fan than offend Xiao Chen. If Mu Fan was a sinister villain who would do anything to achieve his goals, then Xiao Chen was definitely a lawless madman. If you offended Mu Fan on the surface, he might consider some Hachibra Senkai rules and only dare to plot against you behind your back. However, if you offended Xiao Chen, then it would be hard to say. Xiao Chen absolutely did not care about any rules. Even if you angered Xiao Chen in front of all the realm lords, he would still dare to slash you alive. Helplessly laughing bitterly, Yu Shujin seemed to have guessed Xiao Chen's decision after learning about this matter. However, even if she knew, Yu Shujin had no way to stop it. She also had no way to influence Xiao Chen. Taking out the sound transmission charm, she could only tell Xiao Chen truthfully what had happened in Seven Star City. In the seventh realm, Xiao Chen received Yu Shujin's message on the same day. It was already late at night. Sitting in the courtyard, Xiao Chen's eyes flashed with a cold glint. Sensing the change in Xiao Chen, Hong Xiu asked curiously, "What's wrong?" Facing Hong Xiu's question, Xiao Chen had no intention to hide the truth. After hearing about the incident in Seven Star City, Hong Xiu's expression turned cold. Then, she said with some self-blame, "I'm sorry. It's all because of me." The incident in Seven Star City was obviously revenge. As for the reason, it was definitely related to Hong Xiu. She felt that she had dragged Xiao Chen down and caused Wang Qi and the other three to suffer an undeserved calamity. Looking at Hong Xiu, who was blaming herself, Xiao Chen shook his head and said with a smile, "It's not your fault. Even without you, Mu Fan and I can't coexist peacefully. But since he wants to play, I'll play with him." After saying that, Xiao Chen immediately exchanged for a young genius from the seventh realm and ordered him to prepare for the trip to Seven Star City. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's order, the young genius bowed and responded immediately. He didn't dare to ask any more questions and went to prepare immediately. 2 hours later, Xiao Chen, Hong Xiu, Luan Luan, and even Wine Daoist appeared in the main square. This time, Xiao Chen had brought along 100 geniuses from the seventh realm to Seven Star City. Apart from that, there were also 5 immortal stage experts from the seventh realm and Wine Daoist, who was an almighty immortal venerable. Of course, Wine Daoist was the one who wanted to go. It wasn't Xiao Chen's request. Wine Daoist had been cooped up in the seventh realm for such a long time. Since he wanted to go out, Xiao Chen didn't refuse. As for Hong Xiu and Luan Luan, the 2 women had been pestering Xiao Chen. In the end, Xiao Chen had no choice but to agree. Until now, they still didn't know what had happened in Seven Star City. After Xiao Chen arrived, Xiao Chen looked at the group of geniuses from the seventh realm in front of him, and said softly, 3 days ago, Wang Qi and the other 3 went to Seven Star City, but they encountered Tian Hong from the first realm and the people of He Ming's sect. The 4 of them were seriously injured. Wang Qi's right arm was cut off. Moreover, Tian Hong and the people of He Ming's sect hung the 4 of them on the city wall of Seven Star City for 3 days. What do you think we should do about this? After briefly explaining the matter to everyone, the geniuses from the seventh realm were enraged. Each of them was at the prime of their youth. Moreover, they were all geniuses of the seventh realm. Each of them was more arrogant than the other. Now that they heard that their companions were humiliated in such a way, they couldn't bear it any more and immediately shouted in a deep voice, "Kill!" There was nothing much to say. Just kill. Killing intent flashed in Xiao Chen's eyes when he heard their words. He nodded slowly and said, "Let's go." As Xiao Chen's voice faded, everyone quickly boarded the starship and soared into the sky, disappearing into the night sky in an instant. Xiao Chen led his people and left. Just as Yu Shujin had expected, given Xiao Chen's character, it was absolutely impossible for him to endure such a thing. Killing to stop killing was Xiao Chen's style. It was imaginable that in the next few days, there would be a great earthquake in Seven Star City. The He Ming sect wouldn't have a good ending either. Perhaps Xiao Chen wouldn't even let Tian Hong and the other 2 geniuses from the first realm go. While Xiao Chen led his people to Seven Star City, in the main palace of the seventh realm, Luo Li, Li Qiu, and another immortal emperor were looking at the sky. Li Qiu said helplessly, "Realm Lord, are we really not going to do anything? Please add, recommend, and vote." Chapter 1774. Li Qiu and the other two naturally knew what Xiao Chen was going to do. The incident in Seven Star City couldn't be hidden from their eyes. Upon hearing Li Qiu's words, Luo Li, who was sitting on the main seat, said with a smile, "How? That old thing Mu Tai hasn't shown up yet. How can I show up? Since it's a matter of the younger generation, let them solve it themselves." The actions of the First Realm had nothing to do with Mu Tai. It was entirely Mu Fan's idea. Since Mu Tai didn't show up, Luo Li naturally wouldn't show up. Upon hearing Luo Li's words, Li Qiu shook his head helplessly and smiled bitterly. "I guess the He Ming sect won't survive. Humph, so be it. It's not a subordinate force of the Seventh World. I agree with Xiao Chen's decision. One can't be too weak. Otherwise, wouldn't everyone bully him?" Hearing Li Qiu's words, an immortal emperor said coldly, "Haha, I don't care if you can't survive." Xiao Chen led his people and left the Seventh Realm, rushing towards Seven Star City. Perhaps no one would have thought that such a small matter would set off a bloodbath in the immortal realm. Perhaps even Mu Fan didn't expect such an outcome. After all, Mu Fan didn't know much about Xiao Chen. It was even more impossible for him to know how crazy Xiao Chen could be once he went crazy. The starship traveled through the night sky unhurriedly. Anyway, Seven Star City wasn't far from the Seventh Realm. Moreover, Xiao Chen wasn't afraid that Shiju would run away. A monk can run away, but the temple can't. After a night of traveling, Xiao Chen's starship slowly arrived in the sky above Seven Star City in the early morning. Naturally, flying was not allowed in the sky above Seven Star City, let alone a starship. However, Xiao Chen didn't dare to do so. The starship stopped directly above Seven Star City. Seeing the sudden appearance of a starship, the cultivators in Seven Star City began to whisper to each other. A few days ago, Wang Qi and the others were hung on the city wall. Naturally, many people saw them and knew their identities. Now that the Seventh Realm starship had arrived, many cultivators guessed Xiao Chen's intention. Someone from the Seventh Realm has come. It must be because of what happened a few days ago. That's for sure. Being tied to the city wall and humiliated like that, it would be strange if the Seventh Realm didn't care. I just don't know which lord is coming this time. However, that expert of the older generation shouldn't be coming personally. That's impossible. I heard that the heirs of the First World and the Seventh World have a conflict. That's why they're here. I think the heir of the Seventh World will come in person. The heir is coming in person? You must be kidding. How could the heir come in person for such a small matter? I think it's the young geniuses from the Seventh Realm. Everyone was discussing. While they were talking, Yu Shujin and a dozen other geniuses from the Seventh Realm, who had arrived in Seven Star City first, arrived in front of the starship. Then, Xiao Chen slowly walked down from the starship, surrounded by the crowd. Seeing Xiao Chen, Yu Shujin and the others respectfully said in their hearts, "Greetings, senior brother heir." Heir? It really was the heir of Kunlun. Hearing what Yu Shujin and the others said, many warriors in Seven Star City all looked at Xiao Chen. They saw Xiao Chen, who was wearing a white robe and had long snow-white hair and blood-red eyes. Many cultivators looked at him with admiration. The 8 heirs of the 8 Barren Immortal Realm were revered by tens of thousands of people in the First Barren Territory. Many people would never be able to see the faces of the heirs of the 8 Barren Immortal Realm. Now, Xiao Chen, the 7th heir of the 8 Barren Immortal Realm, had come to Seven Star City in person. This is the heir of the 7th Realm? What a strong sense of oppression! Many people couldn't help but exclaim. Xiao Chen didn't do anything deliberately, but he simply stood in the sky and made the cultivators below feel a terrifying pressure. It was a pressure that came from the depths of their hearts. Everyone craned their necks to look at Xiao Chen, wanting to see the face of the heir of the 7th Realm with their own eyes. Xiao Chen ignored their actions. At the same time, Shiju and more than a dozen cultivators of the city lord's mansion, who were also supreme saints, rose into the air and came before Xiaochen. They bowed respectfully to Xiaochen and said, "I am Shiju, the city lord of Seven-Star City. Greetings, Your Highness." Previously, Shiju had been very confident when facing Yu Shujin because he had the support of the First Realm. At that time, he also thought that even if Xiaochen came in person, he wouldn't be too afraid. But now, when Xiaochen really came and stood before him, Shiju panicked. Just facing Xiaochen made Shiju's forehead break out in a cold sweat. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Is this the aura of an heir of the First Realm? Shiju was the city lord of Seven-Star City, but he had never been in close contact with the heirs of the Hachibra Senkai. His status was too low to talk to the heirs of the First Realm. His heart was in a mess. After bowing respectfully to Xiaochen, Shiju and the other cultivators of the city lord's mansion didn't get a reply from Xiaochen for a long time. They could only lower their heads and didn't dare to make any unnecessary movements. Xiaochen glanced at Shiju indifferently. Facing his gaze, Shiju felt as if a sharp sword was stabbing him directly. His entire body trembled involuntarily, and his back was instantly drenched in cold sweat. He thought that Xiaochen would scold him, but he did not expect that Xiaochen would only glance at Shiju for a moment before retracting his gaze. He did not say anything, as if he was facing an ant that could be easily squashed to death. Looking away, Xiaochen said to Yu Shujin indifferently, "Go and see Wang Qi and the others." From beginning to end, Xiaochen only glanced at Shiju and didn't say anything. He also didn't intend to punish him. Only when Xiaochen left under Yu Shujin's lead did Shiju and the other cultivators of the city lord's mansion let out a sigh of relief. Originally, they thought that since Xiaochen had come personally, he would definitely punish them no matter what. Who would have thought that Xiaochen would leave without saying anything? Everyone secretly heaved a sigh of relief. However, they didn't know that Xiaochen didn't punish them because he planned to let them go. In Xiaochen's eyes, Shiju and the entire city lord's mansion of Seven-Star City were already dead. Facing a group of dead people, was there a need to punish them? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1775. Xiaochen left directly under Yu Shujin's lead. Regarding this, everyone in the city lord mansion could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. However, Shiju's heart was still very nervous. There was no other way. The pressure that Xiaochen gave him was too great. Now that Xiaochen personally came to Seven-Star City, Shiju did not have the slightest sense of security. With his heart in a mess, Shiju quickly turned around and returned to the city lord manor. Now that Xiaochen had personally come to Seven-Star City, Shiju had to seek help from the First Realm. Fortunately, a genius from the First Realm had secretly stayed in Seven-Star City and was now in the city lord manor. Shiju wanted to ask him for help. Only the First Realm could protect Shiju, or rather, give Shiju some sense of security. Ignoring Shiju's actions, Xiaochen had already met Wang Qi's group of 4 under Yu Shujin's lead. Seeing that the 4 of them had yet to recover from their injuries, Xiaochen's expression was calm. On the contrary, when the 4 of them saw Xiaochen, they were terrified. They wanted to salute respectfully but were stopped by Xiaochen. "There's no need for that. The 4 of you are injured. Lie down first." After hearing Xiaochen's words, Wang Qi's group of 4 anxiously lay down again. Looking at the nervous 4 of them, Xiaochen comforted them. "Shujin has told me everything. Rest well and leave the rest to me. Senior brother heir, we have embarrassed the 7th realm." Wang Qi's eyes were filled with self-blame after hearing Xiaochen's words. This time, the 4 of them could be said to have lost a lot of face. Not only were they injured, but they were also severely humiliated. They were hung on the city wall of 7-Star City for 3 days and 3 nights in front of countless people. In the face of Wang Qi's self-blame, Xiao Qin didn't blame him in the slightest and said, "They didn't mean it. It's not your fault. If you have lost face, just take it back. Rest well and don't think too much about other things." He knew that the incident this time was a huge blow to the 4 of them, but what was done was done. The only thing Xiao Qin could do was to regain the face that he had lost. As for what had already happened, no one could change it. After comforting the 4 of them, Xiao Qin wasn't worried about their injuries. Tian Hong still had a sense of propriety. Although he had severely injured them, he didn't kill them. He still had scruples about Hachibara Senkai's rules. However, Zhao's rules didn't apply. Xiao. Since Tian Hong was courting death, Xiao. He asked Hong Xiu to bring Wan Luan to the backyard first. Then, Xiao Qin led everyone to the front hall and sat on the main seat. Xiao Qin glanced at the 7th World's geniuses and the Immortal Realm experts present. He said calmly, "Let's deal with the city governor's mansion first." I don't want to see any living thing in the city governor's mansion in the next day. Finally, he was going to deal with the city governor's mansion of 7-Star City. From Xiao Chen's tone, it seemed that he was going to wipe out the entire city governor's mansion. Yu Shujin's expression didn't change. However, a 7th World's Immortal Realm expert said worriedly, "Wiping out the entire city governor's mansion is against the rules." The city governor's mansion of 7-Star City was an external force of the Hachibara Senkai. The city governor was also an external member of the Hachibara Senkai. He was appointed by the Hachibara Senkai. Now that Xiao Qin was going to wipe out the entire city governor's mansion, it would be a big deal. Facing the Immortal Realm expert's concern, Xiao Qin said calmly, "I'll take care of it. If you don't want to go, you can go back to the 7th World." Without waiting for the Immortal Realm expert's reply, Xiao Qin said in a deep voice, "Okay, let's do it." No one in the 7th World dared to disobey Xiao Qin. Therefore, the geniuses started to move and flew toward the city governor's mansion of 7-Star City. In the blink of an eye, the geniuses of the 7th World and the Immortal Realm experts arrived above the city governor's mansion. At the same time, in a beautiful courtyard in the city governor's mansion, Shiju was speaking to a young man in front of her with a horrified expression. "They're here. They're really here. Sir, save me." The young man was one of the geniuses of the 1st World who stayed in 7-Star City. Shiju was terrified when she sensed that the geniuses of the 7th World had arrived at the city governor's mansion. On the other hand, the young man sneered. "City Governor Shi, don't worry. With me here, the geniuses of the 7th World won't be able to touch you. I don't believe that Xiao Qin dares to kill his fellow disciples in public." The young man didn't think that Xiao Qin would dare to kill his fellow disciples in public, because even Mu Fan wouldn't do such a thing. Even if he wanted to kill someone, he would only do it behind their back. It was obviously a huge mistake to use Mu Fan's way of doing things to consider Xiao Qin. Mu Fan didn't dare to do something, but it didn't mean that Xiao Qin didn't dare to do it. The young man thought that Xiao Qin wouldn't dare to take action. Then, accompanied by Shiju and the other experts of the city governor's mansion, the young man slowly rose into the air and arrived in front of the geniuses of the 7th World. Xiao Qin didn't participate in the attack on the city governor's mansion. After all, it would be too much of a bully if Xiao Qin had to take action against the city governor's mansion of 7-Star City. Yu Shujin led the team. When she saw the geniuses of the 1st World surrounded by the experts of the city governor's mansion, Yu Shujin said with a sullen expression, "It's indeed your 1st World. Ha, Yu Shujin, what do you mean by our 1st World? Don't talk nonsense. I just happened to pass by 7-Star City. I heard that the 7th World wanted to attack the city governor's mansion, so I specially came to remind you that this is against the rules." Hearing Yu Shujin's words, the genius sneered. He didn't intend to take action. After all, he was obviously no match for the 7th World. However, with him here, would the 7th World dare to take action? As long as the city governor's mansion of 7-Star City was protected, the genius mission would be completed. Anyway, he had made up his mind that the 7th World wouldn't dare to take action against him. It had to be said that the genius of the First World had a good idea. Unfortunately, he had chosen the wrong target. If it had been the heirs of other worlds, perhaps they wouldn't have dared to kill him in public. However, he was facing Xiao Chen, who was a person who didn't care about anything. As expected, just as the genius finished speaking and before Yu Shujin and the others had time to reply, in another corner of 7-Star City, in the mansion of the 7th World, a blood-red sword light flashed and instantly pierced through the genius's forehead. Without any warning, without even saying anything, a sword light flashed and the genius of the First World was killed in front of everyone's eyes. There was no doubt as to who had killed him. Other than Xiao Chen, who else could it be? Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 1776. Just a second ago, he had been full of confidence that Xiao Chen would not dare to kill him. However, in the next second, Xiao Chen had pierced the space between his eyebrows and killed him. Perhaps the genius had not expected that he would be killed so easily. Moreover, judging from Xiao Chen's attack, he had not hesitated at all. Did Xiao Chen not dare to kill the genius from the first realm? At this moment, Xiao Chen had given him the answer with his actions. At the same time, before he died, the genius from the first realm finally realized that Xiao Chen was definitely more lawless than Mu Fan, the heir of the first realm. At least, Mu Fan would definitely not kill his fellow disciples in front of so many people. He would only play dirty tricks behind his back. However, Xiao Chen did not care about these things. His vitality was completely destroyed by Xiao Chen's finger. As the genius from the first realm died, Shi Ju, who was standing beside him, was stunned. He had not expected this at all. Killed. He had killed him so easily without any hesitation. Xiao Chen had even dared to kill the genius from the first realm, let alone them. At this moment, Shi Ju's heart was filled with endless fear. At the same time, he finally understood why Xiao Chen had ignored the people from the city governor's mansion. It was not that Xiao Chen intended to let them go. However, in Xiao Chen's eyes, the city governor's mansion of 7-Star City was already a group of dead people. In the face of a group of dead people, what else was there to say to him? He was instantly engulfed by fear. He unconsciously looked at the mansion that belonged to the 7th realm in the distance, but he could not see Xiao Chen at all. In the end, Shi Ju could only look at Yu Shujin. Facing Shi Ju's gaze before he could speak, Yu Shujin spoke first. "I have already warned you, but you didn't listen. In fact, compared to Mu Fan, our heir of the first realm is probably more dangerous." As she spoke, Yu Shujin made a helpless expression. Hearing this, Shi Ju's face instantly turned ashen. He had chosen to join the first realm because he felt that Mu Fan was more dangerous than Xiao Chen. However, the truth was completely different. Xiao Chen was even more dangerous than Mu Fan. At the very least, Mu Fan would never kill a Hachibra Senkai genius in front of everyone. Her heart was filled with endless regret. Unfortunately, it was too late now. If Shi Ju could talk to Yu Shujin properly before Xiao Chen came to 7-Star City, then there might be a chance for a turnaround. Unfortunately, Shi Ju was full of confidence when facing Yu Shujin at that time. Yu Shujin had no choice but to send a message to Xiao Chen. At this time, Xiao Chen had already arrived. Obviously, Shurju's apology and repentance could not change anything. Shurju opened his mouth and wanted to say something. However, before he could speak, Xiao Chen's voice slowly came from the mansion of the seventh realm. Yu Shujin, what are you waiting for? Do you want me to do it myself? The genius from the first realm had been killed by Xiao Chen. Yu Shujin and the others were fully capable of dealing with the remaining experts from the City Lord's mansion. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Yu Shujin smiled helplessly. Then, she looked at Shurju and said, City Lord Shur, there is no medicine for regret in this world. You have to bear the consequences of your choice. Do it. With Yu Shujin's order, the geniuses from the seventh realm and the immortal realm experts all attacked. In an instant, the entire City Lord's mansion of 7 Stars City turned into a purgatory. Xiao Chen's order was to kill everyone. Therefore, the geniuses from the seventh realm obviously did not have the slightest scruple. In the blink of an eye, the City Lord's mansion of 7 Stars City was already flowing with blood. Facing the scene in front of him, Shurju's heart was filled with regret. At the same time, he was filled with hatred. Devil, definitely a devil. At this time, in Shurju's eyes, Xiao Chen was a complete devil. Men, women, old and young, regardless of whether they had cultivation or not, there was no such thing as letting them go. Many geniuses from the seventh realm also carried out Xiao Chen's order firmly and unconditionally. Screams were incessant. Looking at the drastic change in the City Lord's mansion, many warriors in 7 Stars City also felt waves of hatred rising from the bottom of their hearts. Ruthless, too ruthless. They thought that once Xiao Chen came, the City Lord's mansion of 7 Stars City would bow down and admit their mistakes. But who knew that Xiao Chen did not intend to give the City Lord's mansion of 7 Stars City a chance to admit their mistakes. Instead, he directly slaughtered the whole family. This heir of the seventh realm is so ruthless. Yes, so ruthless. It seems that the City Lord's mansion of 7 Stars City has really kicked an iron plate this time. He didn't even give them a chance. Shoo, don't talk about it. The heir of the seventh realm is not a kind person. If we talk again and he hears it, we will inevitably suffer an unexpected disaster. Many warriors were whispering, but Xiao Chen did not have the slightest intention to pay attention to them. What others wanted to say was their business. It was fine as long as they did not come out to stop him. Under the siege of the seventh realm, the City Lord's mansion of 7 Stars City had almost no power to fight back. Seeing the experts from the City Lord's mansion of 7 Stars City fall, Shurju finally went crazy and punched Yu Shujin. However, before his attack could reach Yu Shujin, it was blocked by a celestial realm expert from the seventh realm. Even though Shurju's cultivation was in the Great Sage Great Perfection realm, he was still as weak as an ant in front of an immortal realm expert. Yu Shujin easily blocked Shurju's attack. Seeing this, Shurju's eyes were no longer hopeful. He looked at Yu Shujin angrily and shouted, Yu Shujin, your seventh realm is simply a group of demons. You have slaughtered so many people. Don't you think it's cruel at all? Shurju regretted it, but at the same time, he hated Xiao Chen's cruelty. Because of this, Xiao Chen actually slaughtered the entire City Lord's mansion of 7 Stars City. If it were any of the Hachibra Senkai's heirs, even Mu Fan, they would never do such a thing. Yu Shujin didn't reply to Shurju's angry roar. The immortal realm expert from the seventh realm also struck out with his palm. Shurju was immediately killed by his palm. Her entire body turned into a cloud of blood mist in the sky. Shurju was dead, and the City Lord's mansion of 7 Stars City was also destroyed. In the mansion of the seventh realm, the Wine Taoist and Xiao Chen sat in a circle in the garden with a complicated expression. The Wine Taoist looked at Xiao Chen and said, The wine Taoist originally wanted to ask if Xiao Chen was too cruel, but before he could speak, Xiao Chen interrupted him. You chose your own path. Naturally, you have to bear the consequences. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 1777. Cruel? Xiao Chen didn't think so. The strong preyed on the weak, and the survival of the fittest was the basic law of this world. Cruel things were happening everywhere in the Hachibara Senkai. Who could change anything? The only reason for the massacre of the Seven Stars City Lord Mansion was that they had provoked the Seventh Realm. It was that simple, so Xiao Chen wanted to destroy them. He only cared about the people around him, and would only help the people around him. Xiao Chen was not a savior and would not have compassion for the people around him. Especially after the incident in the Seventh Wilderness, Xiao Chen became even more so. Don't say that Xiao Chen was selfish. How could a guy who couldn't even take care of the people around him become a savior? It was ridiculous. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Chen drank the wine in his cup in one gulp. Hearing this, Wine Taoist didn't say anything. The Wine Taoist was not a benevolent person. Or rather, to be able to reach the Wine Taoist's level, how many of them did not have their hands stained with blood? In terms of cruelty, the Wine Taoist had seen or done many things that were crueler than this in his life. There was definitely more than one. Without saying anything more, Wine Taoist also drank silently. Soon, the entire Seven Stars City Lord Mansion was besieged by the Seventh Realm's sky prides and completely fell. According to Xiao Chen, no one was spared. Facing the City Lord Mansion's fate, many warriors in the Seven Stars City were extremely nervous. They were afraid that Xiao Chen would attack them. However, they were obviously overthinking. The Seven Stars City Lord Mansion had brought about its own destruction. As for the warriors in the Seven Stars City, Xiao Chen had never thought of attacking them. After settling the matter of the City Lord Mansion, Yu Shujin led a group of sky prides back to the mansion. Seeing Yu Shujin return, Xiao Chen nodded slightly and said, "Not bad." Next is the He Ming sect. The He Nether sect had destroyed the Seven Star City's City Lord Mansion, but Xiao Chen still had no intention of stopping. He still wanted to attack the He Nether sect. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, the corners of Yu Shujin's eyes twitched unconsciously. What do you mean by audacious? This is audacious. Not only did he destroy the Seven Star City's City Lord Mansion, he even wanted to destroy the He Underworld sect. This is simply lawless. One should know that the He Nether sect was not the City Lord Mansion of Seven Stars City. Even in the First Wilderness, the He Nether sect's strength was firmly ranked in the top 10. Naturally, it could not be compared to the Hachibara Senkai. However, aside from the Hachibara Senkai, the He Nether sect was not afraid of the other forces in the First Wilderness. They could be considered the backbone of the First Wilderness. Moreover, the He Ming sect had existed for so many years. Many of their ancestors had also broken through to the immortal state and joined the Hachibara Senkai. At this time, in the various realms of the Hachibara Senkai, there were many powerful figures of the older generation who had stood out from the He Ming sect. If Xiao Chen wanted to destroy the He Ming sect, these people would definitely not stand by and do nothing. Destroying the He Ming sect was definitely not an easy task. However, looking at Xiao Chen's expression, Yu Shujin knew that even if she tried to persuade Xiao Chen, he would definitely not listen to her. That was indeed the case. Once Xiao Chen had decided on something, it would be difficult to change his mind. Moreover, the He Ming sect felt that they were the main culprits in this matter. They were the ones who had injured Wang Qi and the other three. Although this was definitely Mu Fan's idea, it was undeniable that the people who had attacked them were from the He Ming sect. Knowing the identity of Wang Qi and the others, the He Ming sect still dared to attack them. This was obviously looking down on the seventh realm. Therefore, compared to the seven-star city's city lord mansion, the He Ming sect deserved to die more. Perhaps it was because no one in the immortal realm had dared to provoke them over the years that the He Ming sect had become more and more arrogant. With the first realm behind them, they did not even care about the other realms of the Hachibra Senkai. A cold glint flashed in Xiao Chen's eyes as he said indifferently, "Go and get ready. We'll make a trip to the He Ming sect." They had to go to the He Ming sect. To put it bluntly, the seven-star city's city lord mansion was not important at all. The He Ming sect really needed to be taught a lesson. Otherwise, they would not know who was in charge of the first wilderness. Xiao Chen's way of dealing with this matter was simple and crude. There was no reason at all. If you dare to touch the people of the seventh realm, I'll slaughter your entire family. It was that simple. Hearing Xiao Chen's order, although Yu Shujin was a little hesitant, she finally nodded and agreed. To be honest, Yu Shujin was now a little worried. Based on Xiao Chen's personality, this matter was probably going to become the talk of the town. At that time, no one could say for sure how big of a fuss Xiao Chen would make. She could not help but secretly sigh for the He Ming sect. They could have provoked anyone, but they had to listen to the idiot Mu Fan's order to provoke Xiao Chen. Now, let's see what the He Ming sect will do. They were not in a hurry to go to the He Ming sect. After a night's rest, Xiao Chen and the others boarded the starship the next morning. They slowly flew out of Seven Star City and headed in the direction of the He Ming sect. In one night, the He Ming sect had obviously received the news from Seven Star City. They heard that the Seventh Realm's heir Xiao Chen had arrived and slaughtered the City Lord Mansion of Seven Star City within a few hours. During this time, Xiao Chen had even personally killed a genius from the First Realm. The great sage of the He Ming sect panicked. The higher-ups of the He Ming sect naturally knew that the people of the He Ming sect had injured Wang Qi and the other three. Several of them were present and had also taken action. Now that Xiao Chen had personally come to Seven Star City, it was obvious that he was here to settle the score. Now that the City Lord Mansion of Seven Star City had been destroyed, it was obvious that his next target would be the He Ming sect. It was already late at night, but the main hall of the He Ming sect was still brightly lit. The great sage sat together in a circle, looking very serious. Among them, Kai Kongxin, the leader of the He Ming sect, was sitting on the main seat. He said angrily, "I've already told you not to meddle in the internal affairs of the Hachibra Senkai, but you just didn't listen. Now, the Seventh Realm's heir has personally come to Seven Star City and slaughtered the entire City Lord Mansion in an instant. It's our turn next. What do you think we should do?" Kai Kongxin knew the whole story. At first, he did not agree with the He Ming sect interfering in the internal conflict between Mu Fan and Xiao Chen. However, his subordinates did not listen to his orders and still attacked the people from the Seventh Realm behind his back. At first, he thought that the Seventh Realm's heir would be reasonable. In that case, the He Ming sect would only need to pay the appropriate compensation and the matter would be settled. After all, no one had died. However, judging from the current situation, Xiao Chen, the Seventh Realm's heir, was clearly an unreasonable person. The City Lord Mansion of Seven Star City was a good example. Now, facing Xiao Chen, how should the He Ming sect deal with him? Please add vote recommend. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.